Miniature soldiers, big opinions. This is the Conclave Podcast.
I don't know what we're doing. Oh, hello and welcome to the Conclave Podcast. I am Reza, and today I'm joined by some very beautiful, handsome men. I was going to say young men, but then it's going to get really weird. Not that it's not weird already. Anyway, so let's keep going.
Good start.
Ed, say
I feel
hello.
we're going on the inside, goddammit.
Ed, say hello. Save me.
Hello. Yeah, beautiful intro as ever, Rich.
Thank you. Adam, how are you today?
I'm alright. Enjoying this ongoing glorious weather we're having.
And Alex, you've just been seeing Jim. How is he?
He is good. Although, it's talking about, all of us being old, I swear to God, I had a friend of mine the other day. I said, I just got a haircut, and I'm so happy about it, because now my hair's not, 4 foot long. But I sent her a selfie of this haircut, and she was like, "Oh my God, you're so much more grey than the last time I saw you." I'm just like, what? That's just, oh. I was very happy
we're
at
all
this.
getting old. It's alright. I saw a thing the other day which said when you hit 35, you either need to get in. If you're a man, you either need to get really into World War II in a really over the top way, really enthusiastic about World War II military history. Probably will start playing Bolt Action, given we're miniature war gamers, or you need to just learn how to smoke meat. And those are your choices, and that's it. So pick a hobby now, guys, to add on top of Warhammer.
Wait, smoke meat?
Yeah, smoke meat. Having building a little smoker in your garden.
Not like a joint.
Oh, I was going to
Yeah,
say.
I don't mean rolling up a bavette steak and trying to smoke it like a roll up. That will not work. At least
It is scary in life how quickly you become that guy. I didn't realise this, but I cycle into work. And I didn't think this was a core part of my identity because I don't really like cycling. And then when my birthday came, I just got nothing but cycling gifts. And someone sent around a meme, and then they were like, "Oh, the cycling guy, that's Ed." I was like, "Do I have no other identity in this office?"
Do you do it in the full lycra? That's
no,
my
I don't.
question.
I don't. I genuinely. I do it out of convenience.
Yeah. Because I work in where I work, quite a lot of people, or where I used to work, and I assume where I currently work, although we haven't obviously been back to the office yet, given I've moved jobs. A lot of people cycle, and when you cycle into, I think most cities, but certainly the city of London, the financial district, there are a lot of MAMILs, MAMILs, people who don't know what that is. That's middle-aged men in lycra. Not necessarily middle-aged, but a lot of people who think that the Cycle Superhighway is actually a stage of the Tour de France, and at 7 a.m. they need to be absolutely belting it along on their $2,000 carbon or $4 grand carbon bikes. But hey, again, look, we're a hobby podcast. Everybody's got to have a hobby, and yours, Ed, is that you're the cycling guy. Actually, that's a good point. Why haven't you modelled? Maybe this is a challenge for you. You can model a Gene Steeler cult Jackal, whether it's a Jackal Alphas or one of the motorbike guys,
bike.
just on a road bike with the full-on lycra on his
I like
way
the
to
really
work
long
with a
helmet
melter
they have.
charge. Yeah.
I'll make it. And she's got 2 less movement than everybody else. she's still in the same squad.
But
There's a
everything
little
counts
bell.
as difficult terrain because it's a road bike.
Yeah, to be fair, cycling through a field as well. That's got to be a bitch. Poor girl.
Massive quads, massive legs.
Actually, saying this, I've always wanted. Have you guys seen this thing? It's called a one wheel.
Yeah. It's the thing with the 2 little balancing things
Is this
either
a
side of the
unicycle?
wheel. Yeah, basically, it's like a
kind of.
motorized unicycle. So what I was going to say, there's a guy talking about the one wheel. There was a guy when I used to cycle again up to sorry, people who are listening to this are getting very geographically specific. But if you're in London, which I assume a few of you are, you will know where I'm talking about. When you cycle across Southwark Bridge up to Ludgate Circus, I used to do that every morning. And there was a chap who used to come along on one of these electronic one wheel things in a full suit with his briefcase in his hand. So I'd be fat lad puffing along in the cycle lane. I've got the mammal zipping past me, and then all of a sudden, along the road comes this guy,
that is
tie
amazing.
flapping in the wind. Oh, it was
Oh
amazing.
my God, this man is my hero. I love him.
Yeah, so if you've seen him, if you, mysterious one-wheel man, are listening and are a fan of Warhammer 40k, this goes out to you. Good on you. We love that about you.
Amazing.
Well, talking about competitive cycling, today's subject, nice transition, guys.
It's not that at all.
It's not competitive cycling, no. We're going to talk about competitive 40k. There's been a bit of a drama in the scene. We're going to talk about
yes.
Drukhari, and then whatever we tangent off to on on the journey
On the
today.
way to those topics.
Not that
Work
we've already done
transportation
Yeah.
being one of them, apparently.
So I guess shall we start on the competitive scene and the drama? Ed, do you want to just go through with us kind of what kind of happened, and then we can have a bit of a chat about it?
Yeah, I'll probably get this wrong, so feel free to correct me as I go. But as I understand it, there was a tournament, and a better known player was actually filmed allegedly making some mistakes, and I think it was that. Because obviously we all make mistakes when we play the game, and I'm sure plenty of us, without knowing it, have made mistakes and won the game because of it. Because it's that you roll a lot of dice and handle a lot of models. But I think there was a bit too many for people to be comfortable with it, and so he kind of got called out because they streamed the game, and so there was a bunch of mistakes, and I think ultimately the scene has taken action against him, and he's been banned for I think a year or something.
Yeah, I think it's a year, and this person was at that point the number one in the ITC rankings. We're not going to name them, just to say off the bat, but everyone knows who they are. If you're into competitive 40k, you would have heard of them. But yeah, they were number one in the ITC, and I believe they've also actually had all of their ITC points stripped. So they're not only can they earn any more, they're not earn any more. And as Ed says, the ban for a year, they are cut from their previous results. So pretty hefty sanction. And I think one of the reasons it was quite a big deal, beyond what Ed says, what happened, is that this is a relatively, understandably and thankfully a relatively rare thing that there is this level of or there is cheating at that sort of very high level, or alleged cheating, I should say. But that the TOs and the tournament organisers in the sort of local circuit where this happened in the US, and also the ITC, who obviously still have quite a big role in international sort of tournament organisation and rules, took action. Because I think the one of the themes of the past has been that there have been situations where stuff has happened, and people felt that appropriate action wasn't taken, and that the deterrence against cheating in competitive 40k, which obviously has grown massively over the last couple of years, the deterrents were pretty small, to be honest. So I think that's been one of the big deals about this as well, coming out of it.
Yeah. I think it's the kind of conversation that's come from it it's certainly the largest conversation I've heard. When I started in the hobby a few years ago, there was another big incident in the UK that I think spurred a lot of conversation. But this is the biggest one I've ever heard about cheating, and it's been good because I think. Again, we're not going to name the person, but they have said that they take responsibility, and they're going to try and do better, and certainly the eyes will be on them from this point forward. So I think that it's been quite positive. Obviously, we're talking about it, as I'm sure most Warhammer podcasters will have done so over the last few weeks. So it's been quite the topic of conversation.
I mean, it's interesting as well. Sorry to cut in, Reza. I was watching a video that the War Mistress did, Tanya, with Val Heffelfinger. And one of the things they started talking about was really interesting to me, because it's something that the scene does not have at the moment. We don't have this set process through which certain specific punishments are given for certain infractions. And I think going forward, that's something we're going to need. It's literally always left up to the TO to just be like, oh, you did this, therefore, on my whim, I'm going to give you this punishment. And so, it's been really interesting to highlight that and be like, well, actually, we kind of need universal guidelines.
You're going to have the UEFA of...
Well, yeah.
Kind of.
I mean, the ITC is sort of getting there, right? And actually, I listened... If
the ITC Super League.
more drama coming out now.
You can buy your way in, and you can't get relegated. So I was actually listening to the Frontline Gaming podcast, and obviously Frontline Gaming, just to shout out to those guys, are the people who run the ITC. They sort of started the whole thing, and they run it over there. And Reese Robbins. I was going to say he's got the same surname as me. It's a good surname to see in Warhammer. But no, Reese over there was making a very good point about training judges. So he was saying, in an ideal universe, they would love to be able to have a system where you effectively had like an ITC accredited. Because at the moment the way it works, right, is you set up a tournament. You obviously have to meet certain criteria, but then you basically can register that as being part of the ITC, and the points that players therefore accrue go into their ITC ranking. If they sign up through the various apps and those scores will get aggregated. And one of the things he was talking about is going alongside that, as you say, to make it more like a FIFA or a UEFA, although probably without all the issues that those organisations have had. But the idea of having an accreditation for like a TO or a judge, effectively like a referee, that you go on a course or something, you get trained up, and then you can make rulings which will be kind of binding in the ITC. And then there are presumably, this is my lawyer hat going on, presumably there would be processes around like arbitration and like the ability to appeal to a panel or something like that. And obviously it would depend on stuff being recorded and having witnesses. It does all get very complicated very quickly. And for what is essentially a hobby involving a bunch of people pushing plastic toy soldiers around a board, right? You can see how this stuff starts to spiral, and there start to be costs, and everything starts to get very, very, very sort of complicated. However, if we are going to have a competitive scene, and maybe this goes to the conversation I know we've had on the podcast before, and we've had it with guests on the podcast before about, does Warhammer competitive move in the direction of being more like esports, right? Where there are going to be big prizes, there is big money that goes into this, and, there are tournaments in the US where you can win a big chunk of cash if you go out there and win, right? Or your income can be based on your performance in Warhammer if you offer coaching services and things like that. If that's going to be a thing, then maybe we do need to have that level of slightly it's not boring to me because law boy, but slightly boring bureaucracy and complexity around having the organisation, because then it means that it disincentivizes, basically it acts as a cap in some way on the incentives which exist to behave badly, right?
Yeah, I agree. So what we've basically decided here is that Adam should be in charge of all Warhammer competitive things.
I am
I
Sepp
second this
Blatter.
motion.
Yeah. If you pass me that envelope filled with definitely not money, and then a tournament could be held in your town anytime soon. No, I'm kidding. What I was going to say is, no, there are people out there who have probably thought this through a hell of a lot. Well, certainly have thought this through a hell of a lot more than me. And people like Reese over at Frontline is a great example of that. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where it goes over the next few years, and I do wonder if we will end up with something like that, like some kind of federated structure. Especially, and Ed's made this point on the podcast before, right, which is that GW are looking to get more involved in the tournament scene and in the competitive scene, right? They've been saying it for a long time, but with 9th edition and with the way they obviously brought in Mike, I can't remember his surname, but the guy who runs Nova, Mike Brandt, there you go, the guy who runs Nova, or ran Nova, and brought him in-house to basically help them write a competitive rule set that took in a lot of what the competitive community likes, and that's how we've ended up with the 9th edition rules and secondaries and things like that, which, for anyone who played 8th edition and played ITC, it was actually quite a smooth transition into those because it was very familiar. The fact that they're doing that kind of indicates that they want to be more involved. They're actually taking action on it now, so maybe we will see that develop on the GW end of things, that you will end up with their sort of more sanctioned tournaments, compared to what we have seen in the past.
Interesting. Sort of going on from this as well, we've probably got a few listeners who are just like, how do you even cheat at like what is essentially a dice game? So like, just for those people, I'm just going to go into a little bit of like what this guy actually did at this competition. Like, he wasn't removing enough models at times. There were times where he would roll 3 dice and say, "Oh, I've got 4 hits."
Yeah.
But he was like hiding it behind terrain. So
yeah, I think
exactly.
that's one Rich said. That's a big one. That's something that it's something that you should do you should be focusing on, even if you're not cheating, just because like you're just avoid the argument.
Yeah.
Always just say, "Are you right if I roll here?" It's a phrase you should utter in a tournament like a dozen or so times, like a game, because it's or else you're just asking for it, really.
Or bring someone round, right? That's the one I've had that before, where you just because of where the scenery is on the table and where there's like models, you can just hey, do you want to just come around here while I roll this? And the other one I'm a big fan of as well is if you roll and you roll really well. So let's say you need like your double six to make your charge or whatever, and it like one dice does happen to roll behind something or whatever, right? That your opponent can't see. Don't just pick it up and immediately go, oh yeah, I got my 12, double six. Like I always like, I don't know if this is over the top, but I think it's always a good idea to say to someone, hey, I've just rolled double six. Here it is, right on the table as it was. Because the other classic, you talk about the cheating thing. The other classic one is you roll when you're rolling a large volume of dice, and then somebody quickly picks up a bunch and says, "Oh yeah, I got 7 hits out of that" or something. You're like, best will in the world. That's again, like Ed says, avoid the argument. That's like a classic example of you can immediately go, "Did you get 7 hits when you hit me on 5s?" And you're -1 to hit or whatever. Like do you know what I mean? It can happen, but it's just about.
Yeah.
That's why dice trays are good. Dice trays are a good thing.
The other one that's
if
quite
they're available, use them. Sorry.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. I think the other one that's quite tough that we'll talk about, which was an incident like last year that I know Quipster you've spoken about quite a bit, where there's a thing where this is quite horrible. But if rule sets are new, people will take advantage of that and lie and exaggerate what their rules can do, because, and this is the thing, none of us know every stratagem in every codex, and you don't want to. It's bad sportsmanship to pick up to say like, "Oh, can I check that? Can I check that the wording?"
Say so.
Well, it can be. I think. I guess to be fair, maybe it depends how you do it, but
I think we spoke about before, Ed. It's a social contract, right? So if I said it to you, you said it to me. I mean, we're friends, so obviously we're not gonna take it the wrong way. But if I said to someone playing a tournament, "Oh, do you mind if I look?" It really comes down to like probably at the beginning of the game saying something like, "I might ask because I don't know your army."
Yeah.
Well, and the thing is, this isn't a solution for everybody, because not everybody buys every codex. But I will have in 8th edition, I had every codex on my phone, and I had Battlescribe, and so I am someone that as you're playing your turn, I will just scroll through and check strats and stuff, just for my own peace of mind. I will do that. But again, and this is why GW, the app, get the app right? If they ever get this app right, it would be a big deal.
Well, I think there's an element of offering it up, right? Like if you have a strat that's really good. I mean, I'm saying if you have a strat, it's such a lame set. If you have a strat that's really good, but like you'll be playing a strat in a particular way, right? That's gonna let you pull something off. Offer it up. Yeah. Just say, hey, I've got this strat. This is what it does. Here's my book, be it in digital form or whatever. Would you like to have a look at it? Right? But I just think that's a good opener. Just say, do you want to have a quick look at it? If they know the strat, they'll go, no, that's fine, cool, know what it does. The flip side of that, and sorry, Crips, I'll let you jump in a second. The flip side of that, of course, is there are some times where your opponent, if you've been a good sportsman, I mean, if it's competitive, debate about whether you want to, you should let people make mistakes. But if you've been a good sportsman in an average game, you probably want to make people double. If you know a strat in, like, let's say an older form that's been updated in a new codex is a good example of this, or if you have a feeling that a strat should do something, often it can be worth just double checking the wording, because it might save them a CP. Like I've seen examples where someone's like, oh, I'll do this strat, 1 CP gives me like +1 to hit against unit X, and then you go, double check that. I think that's this actually came up in a game I had recently where I was like, double check that, because I think that's just against vehicles, and you're shooting at something that's an infantry unit, and they were like, oh yeah, no, it's against vehicles. I was like, right, well, save your CP, right? Because
I'm actually terrible at that. I haven't done it in a game, but I have done it in the videos we've been doing. So like I'll be doing me and Alfred Farias, when we're doing these videos, the ones that I've had to re-record the most are like Space Marines and Dark Angels, because I'm like, oh no, this is the strat. Like I know the strat, and then I will be reading the codex again. I'll be like, oh no, wait, that's changed. And so like it took me way longer to do than it should have done, because I just thought I knew what I was talking about, and then they changed them like ever so slightly in places.
They always sneak little things in, little changes.
Yeah. But I mean, the thing is as well, like when it comes to strats that are extremely powerful, or rules that you look at and you're just like, oh wait, this could be a game changer if I use it in the right place. I think it is incumbent upon you to mention that as kind of housekeeping when you start the game. Like, by the way, look, I can do this, this, and this.
Yeah.
You don't have to tell them your plan, but like for example with Custodes, I would say to someone like, okay, I've got a strat which means I can drop within 6 inches of my banner and 3 inches of you. I've got a strat which lets me double fire. I've got a strat which lets me like target characters.
That depends on the level of the tournament you're at, though. I will caveat. If you're someone that's going for the top 20 places, that isn't something that's required, because that is part of the scene. Is like how well do you know every faction? But absolutely, if you're in the bottom 2/3, as most of us are, then yes,
like me.
Absolutely, prioritize having the good game over the the god.
Yeah,
I think another part of that as well. I was sorry to interject.
Go on.
Another part of that as well is if someone asks you questions, you cannot lie.
Yeah, that's what I was going
can't.
to say. Like, just the flip side of that is you're not, even if you don't know the army, just ask. Like, just go. Have you got anything that can advance and charge this turn, or can you advance and charge that unit? Because like, good example, right? Sisters of Battle. Can you advance and charge? Yes, you can. There's a strat that does it on Sisters of Battle units. There's one strat, so you one unit a turn you can advance and charge it, right? Drakari, turn 2, everything in the army gets advance and charge from power and pain.
Well,
Really?
I think
We'll talk about that later.
I'll be honest. I don't know if I'm a bit cheeky when I play, because I don't know if this is too much, because normally what I will say is I would just say like, "Hi, can you get here?" Like that's what I would point to a point in the battlefield. Right, like just being honest. Like next turn, do you have any? Just to double check, do you have any way? If I put this character here, have you got any way of charging him next turn or whatever? I think that's fine, because if someone did that to me, I wouldn't mind, and that's the way I look at it. But I don't know.
That's quite interesting, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's a
You
good,
get
it's a good
over
way to
here.
do it.
Because and the reason I say that is because the advance and charge is a classic, but plenty of factions have something that isn't advance and charge,
But does
will
similar,
get them,
yeah.
You'll get them across the board. So it's a tough one. I don't want to go through every single. Can you teleport? Can you redeploy? Can you
Any psychic powers?
Can you advance and charge? Do you get extra distance on your charge? Like, do you know what I mean? There's an infinite number
I'm
of
going
ways
to take that. That's a really
tackle
good
them.
idea.
Yeah, it's a good way of doing
that
it,
is a
because
good
I think the key is like intention. Intention is king, right?
Yeah.
Like that's
Sure.
the other one as well. Like
Well-
and one we talk about them a lot. I mean, Ed and I are flipping. I believe the term used by the kids these days is simps for the guys over at Tabletop Titans, and obviously we're very kindly we had Adrian join us a little while back. But like one of the things they always play is like intent is king. Like you get situations where like they'll have I saw they were doing a battle report the other day with Tyranids. And Adrian was using like a Dimacaron, the big Forge World unit, and I'm doing. People can't see this in the video. I'm doing these kind of T-Rex arms because that's kind of what it has, but they're not tiny. They're huge claws. Yeah, like discount Jurassic Park. And he'd moved it behind some terrain that wasn't. It because of obviously its wounds and stuff, it wasn't obscured, but he could position it in such a way that most of Brian's army wouldn't be able to see it. And when he rotated it slightly one way after like a particular thing happened, I think a bit of its tail was sticking out, and Brian immediately went to him and said, "Hey, just FYI, my guys can see that. Is your intent that it's obscured?" And he was like, "Well, yeah." And he went, "Okay, just zip it back slightly, like just turn the model ever so slightly." And it was because he was like, obviously that was your intention, right? So I'm going to just let you know that you've done that. Again, there is a question to Ed's point about competitiveness, like, do you want to like, can you do that to someone and legitimately get away with it? Because that is a mistake. Probably. Should you? Is that kind of a gotcha, kind of a dick move? Also probably. So do you want to be that guy? Is that how you want to win? Probably not.
I think also it actually makes the arguments much like, so it removes arguments to play by intention. So there's a couple of things. So like number one would be like this is actually something I've done a bunch of times when I play GSC. When you've got like 60 models in your backfield, I can spend my movement phase if you want me to. If you and the thing is, you're perfectly entitled to say I'm not uncertain you can screen out this entire zone, and I will try and I would do that to prove that I can, and you're perfectly entitled to ask me to do that. However, some of the times I've played games and I've been like, look, with these neophytes and these acolytes and this truck, I'm just trying to say that this is all screened out and you can't deep strike and charge these characters. Are you right if I could just call that? Because it doesn't matter for the purposes of the game. It just matters all those units are doing a screening. So there's things like that, and then the other thing is when it comes to line of sight, it's always I find it much better to state your intention in your movement phase, because you don't lose anything at that point, but you just make it really clear. And for example, a unit that I to talk about GSE, a unit that I will struggle with is the Achilles Ridge Runners, because they're quite large. It's quite hard to, if I'll take 6, it's quite hard sometimes to get all 6 in line of sight. So what I will do is in my movement phase, be like, so the aim here is that all 6 of these can see your repulsor, Alex. Now, Alex, and this does happen all the time, some people are, I'm actually not certain you could get all 6 in line of sight, and then at that point I'll go, oh, okay, fine, and then I'll move one to somewhere else. But what I wouldn't want to do, I think it's better to do that than to move them in my movement phase, think I've got them all at line of sight, and then Alex says, oh no, I don't think you can see with that one, and at that point I've wasted an Achilles Ridge Runner.
Yeah.
So it actually makes it much better for yourself to actually play by intention.
Yeah, and it's not just intention; it's verbal intention. Like you can intend anything inside your head, but unless you're doing that communication with your opponent, like it doesn't matter. You have to have that.
Narrating
My
your play,
intention
right?
was to win. What do you mean I've lost the game? What do you mean I've been tabled? I intended to win. This is terrible. Sorry.
You narrate your play,
Literally.
right? It's that's something as the more I've played since starting, is the more I find that I'm talking what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Which to someone brand new might be really bizarre. It's like I am moving these models, but it's like I'm going to move.
Well,
these
it's,
models
it's
because
also
I'm
good.
gonna
It's
do
good
it.
for stuff. It's good for stuff like actions as well. Like especially in 9th edition, we have this actions mechanic where units, obviously subject to certain rules and caveats, units that perform actions can't do other things. Well, they certainly can't shoot, right? They can't charge. They can defend a position if they get attacked. Obviously, they can fight back, but they can't shoot and charge. Again, subject to rules that change that, because there are abilities that units have and armies have that change that. So one of the good things is obviously like making sure you're declaring very clearly which units are doing which actions. Like deploy scramblers is a classic competitive one. It's like one I take quite a lot, right? Because it's quite easy to get the points if you have the right sort of units, and just making sure you're going right, these guys are deploying scrambler, these guys are raising a banner, these guys are, I don't know, intercepting data. I'm just trying to think of whatever actions there are.
Heroic intervention is a big one, I find.
Yeah.
Because it's I will say that like a couple of times every game. I will do that where I'll be like, oh yeah, just so you know, I'm outside of 3 here for heroic intervention. Because if you don't say that, your opponent can go like, oh, actually, technically, I think you might be. Whereas like, and also at that point, like I say, in terms of just like measuring things out, it's not that it doesn't matter, because a lot of the time it does matter and you should do it, but some of the times you're fine to just be like, oh, I'm just over 3 for the purposes of holding this objective, but your character can't kill me.
But it's good you say that, because I'm a Blood Angels player. Heroic intervention is a big thing.
Yeah.
So I've got like
Yeah, you get
units
6
that
inches, don't you?
Yeah, I got nothing there.
I'm talking
yeah,
about
I
the
mean-
game, not about something else, Alex.
Oh no, we all know Rich is bigger than 6
We.
inches.
Oh god,
We.
that was the right thing.
But yeah, no, like the other thing as well, I think that's really important to do with communication is how you communicate, your tone of voice and like the way you celebrate things. Because like
Loudly and angry.
you can like actually otherwise
With a baseball
be
bat.
a really good opponent and like talk through things and narrate what you're doing, rolling properly, etc. But if you like every time they miss an armor save, you're just like, ha 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 ha! That's a bit of a dick move. And I know I've been quite bad for that sometimes.
I've never played anyone that's done that, but the one that gets me is the people that are overly negative on every one of your good rolls. I know that's a personal thing. That always gripes me. Where every single roll they go, you've rolled a 6, and it's like, well, I'm going to roll some 6s. Like it's a game of dice.
Statistically, you will never roll any 6s. This is how the game works. I think that's a good one. The other one, I remember once I had an experience where an opponent of mine like piled a unit that was really good at close combat into a unit of mine that was not good at close combat, and kept going, "Are you scared yet?" Like I think in an attempted
that's
jokey
annoying.
way, they were like,
I've
"Oh, are you
played-
afraid
I've
yet?
played
Are you
that guy
afraid
as
yet?
well.
Are you afraid yet?" And I went, "Well, I'm not, because I know they're really good at like I'm not expecting to survive this, right? Like this was not a part of my plan to be like, oh yes, I think I'm going to throw them into combat and they'll be fine. Like I know I'm going to get charged and I know you're going to kill them, and that's, it's not ideal, but it's okay. I've not built my strategy around fighting your really good combat unit because I'm not an idiot. But it was just a bit bizarre. I'm sure that this person was joking, was trying to be humorous, but it was kind of the way they did it was a bit like, I was a bit like, what? No. What?
Yeah,
What?
but I mean,
Are you scared? Yeah, I'm so scared. I'm gonna stop playing Warhammer.
Yeah, I'm gonna go and quit the game now. Even though I'm ahead on the points.
But this is the thing, like, the level at which you can joke with someone is very much dependent on how well you know them. I think a lot of misunderstandings at the table can come from the fact that someone is more socially comfortable saying things than the other person is. Like there are things we'd say to each other that we wouldn't say to a stranger, like especially during a game, like those kinds of jokes, for example. Like, yeah, maybe I'd say that to Adam if we were playing as a joke, but like if it's a stranger, it's a bit like, fuck you doing, man?
You assume I'm scared of any Imperial Fist. I'm not. Except Torgaradon, maybe, with his big power glove of doom.
Giant fist.
Yeah, that's his chin.
The mega fist. Yeah, the Crimson Chin. Well, he's not the Crimson Chin, 'cause he's not a Crimson Fist. There you go, free modelling idea for you out there. Torgaradon, convert him into a Crimson Fist, boom, he's the Crimson Chin.
I mean, going on from that as well, one thing we haven't talked about, and this is going to sound really silly when I say it, but then I'll explain it. Performance-enhancing drugs in Warhammer.
What?
Like, yeah, and all these guys are giving me this look of, what the fuck are you talking about?
Oh, was it? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be honest,
So,
I
like-
did not think it was going to go that way.
What,
So,
bigger
yeah, but
dice?
this is the thing. When people say like performance-enhancing drugs, immediately people think steroids or blood doping or any of that. But
It's not going to help you in
I come
Warhammer.
from
I can run around the
No,
front
it's-
table
it's-
really, really, really fast.
yeah, I can lift all of these carry cases. I can carry so
playing-
many Space Marines.
Playing orcs requires you to be have quite the
Quite
stamina,
strong.
doesn't it? Yeah.
Where are you
so
going,
basically,
Alex?
kids- so I come from a fencing background, and obviously fencing is a sport that does not really involve physical
Poor
strength.
people. Oh.
Endurance, maybe. But what you tend to find is, and I've heard this from top tier competitive fencers, instead of doing steroids or whatever, some people have taken things like modafinil. And modafinil is a drug that's a stimulant, and it's used by like Israeli fighter pilots on long range missions to make sure that they're alert and aware for like long periods of time. And it increases your reaction time, and it increases your
Is that a study drug?
ability to think clearly.
Like Adderall.
Yeah, it's a study
like people,
Yeah,
people, I think,
yeah,
pop in
yeah,
Adderall and
Exactly.
stuff like
Exactly.
that.
Yeah.
What,
So
are
the
you
case
suggesting
is,
blood tests
like-
for Warhammer tournaments?
Well, no, I mean, that's the thing. If someone is taking supplementary modafinil, that does provide an edge, because Warhammer, 3 games in a day, it does mentally tax you.
Well,
You're
it's-
thinking a lot.
Yeah.
and It mentally fatigues you.
I don't think it's. At least I would imagine it's not a. You know, I think it's one of these things where maybe in the future it would be a bigger deal. But like, it is fundamentally a stats and maths game, right? That it's statistics, right? For all the shoving the little plastic men around, it's about working out, you know, averages and you know, dice averages on the dice and stats and things like that, and comparing figures. So yeah, I totally get the idea that if somebody took a substance or something that made you better at kind of the ability to do quick sort of thinking statistical analysis, then yeah, it would make you marginally better. But yeah, I mean I think that's it's good though, Alex. That's a real niche, like.
I guess it all goes back to what you said earlier, Adam, about how like none of these things matter now.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
it all
Yeah.
depends, like, because you're right to
Right.
bring it up, Quipster, but I guess it depends if they do some esport that has like 10 grand on the line. I don't know how much. this is
Yeah, I was
for.
going to say, if
But,
there's like
at that
actual
po-
heavy price
at that
support.
point maybe that's the thing. I don't know.
We're going to see headlines in like 30 years' time where it'll be like, Bob Stevenson, 34, of Worcestershire, arrested for doping at the LWG Fun and Fluff tournament, because apparently we're also winning money at that now. I should have said Las Vegas Open, but I said LWG before I said LVO, so we're going with that now.
He had some
Should've
negative
done
results in
LGT.
his urine test.
Yeah. Jesus. Yeah, you can be. There you go. I'll be the rules. I'll be the. Ed. I'll be the head of the sort of FIFA organisation. Ed can be the tournament monitor, like the chief judge for the competitive side. Alex can run the anti-doping urine sampling operation. And Rich, you can be like in charge of
commentator.
enforcement.
Oh, okay, yeah, we have baseball bat. Yeah.
I think I would love to be the head judge, and I would just be like, rules
I am the
as
law.
written, rules as written, rules as intention, and I would just have like I'd call it like DBR. It would just be called "Don't Be Ridiculous," and like anytime anybody ever says something that's like you really think that this is how, don't be ridiculous, and I would just do a DBR ruling, and then just be normal.
Can we?
Like,
Can we?
I'll
Can
be
we have
standing
it?
behind Ed.
Can
as
we
the
have it
enforcement officer.
like in one of the things I really like about about NFL, about American football, which I am a sort of reasonable fan, is the fact that the refs announce to the stadium, they announce what the decision is. So we could just have Ed walk into the middle of, you know, the room filled with tables and just put his hands up and be like, DBR ruling, holding, 5 centimetre penalty on that unit.
Ed walks in and does a VAR slide. Instant replay.
And I mean, the reason we're talking about this, of course, as well on the competitive side, is that one thing we've all been doing over the last week, 2 weeks, is as opportunities are opening up for competitive Warhammer, we have all, between us and our friends in our sort of little group that we play with in South London as well, have been signing up to various tournaments, probably more than is necessary, to be perfectly honest. But I think we're
No
on
such thing.
we're on course now for what, LGT, Nottingham, Leicester.
Yeah, I think that's the big one. So the biggest tournament in the UK is the London GT, and that company is now setting up a whole bunch of other super majors. So these are like 300 plus people, and and as Adam says, we've signed up for a load of them. Because, and in fact, I think Quipster was like, I posted in the chat. I think it was the Nottingham one or whatever, and the Quipster was like, it's January next year, and I was like, Quipster will sell out, and it did. It sold out in like a day. It's like 350 places, because everybody is so keen right now. We all have painted armies, and we've all got this. Like, I just really want to play this game. And ninth edition is, in my opinion, so much more fun than the Warhammer previously. So I think it's just like tournaments will be more enjoyable because of that. Because you want less proper jank. You don't want to auto lose, auto win. And I think we're getting to that kind of place. So I think everybody.
We don't want Iron Hands again. Basically.
Yeah, for sure.
Also, the road trip to get to these places. It's going to be the Venga party bus.
We'll actually be able to all be in a car together, or a bus, or something.
True. In fact, they've just announced the Coventry one, which is actually good for me. It's quite near where my parents live, so I will be staying at my sister's house probably. That's like it's like a 3-day event.
Nice.
Wow,
it's going to be a big one.
Oh yeah, that's a super long one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to be good. It's going to be a good season.
It's not just the tournament scene. There's things like the DZTV Open Day that are going to start happening now.
Yeah.
Nice plug.
Nice plug.
Excellent
Solid, yeah.
I thought so.
What's that?
Just go swoop
Do you know
in
Winters?
there. I do. I actually saw him yesterday.
Yeah, well, there we go.
Yeah, there we go. I didn't even
how
drop
did
it
that
in. Like, you guys brought it up for me. But so
We've been used.
Having talked to Winters, having talked to Winters yesterday, we were talking about like things that we want to happen, like for DZTV and the event space, and like he is desperate to get out there and start playing some events and some tournaments. Like, you will see him around doing stuff.
Yeah,
And it's
I
gonna
mean,
be-
the DCTV Open Day sounds like a really good. Like, I'd be interested in coming along, just because I've I'm on the Discord, and I've talked to people through that, and obviously we've talked to people on House Party a lot over lockdown, and it'd just be really nice to, like, I would say put faces to names, but obviously it's all video chat, so I have, but see people in person,
I feel like we have to go, because rumour has it's the only event of the year that Quipster drinks. Like, this is why.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Oh my word!
Alex, you drink?
I don't drink, but I'll
Except
think about it.
you should put this on the
about it.
poster. See drunk.
Oh my
Quipster.
god! The only time.
So the
I've
thing
drunk-
about custodies that no one gets, man, is like
That's why actually Traders of Valoris could just beat up any Primarch if we wanted to. It's fine. It's a good guy, It's my best friend.
Well, actually, saying this, so the last time this happened, it wasn't an official part of the event, but the night before, obviously, all the DZTV guys who were organising turned up. Everyone got pizzas. They were setting up terrain, and obviously, people were drinking. And apparently, that's like the most drunk anyone has ever got Winters. And Liam, being in the army, like, knows how to drink, and was just Winters was trying to keep up with him, and apparently it was hilarious. So that is now a part. The night before is now part of the event. So yeah, if this is gonna happen, we're all gonna go up for the evening before, because that's gonna be hilarious.
Yeah, and they normally have that up at like Element Games, right? Like up in Stockport.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah.
That's
So
the one.
it's pretty
Yeah.
convenient. Pretty convenient. I mean, that's the other thing that's going to be nice as well. I think just about both that and London Grand Tournament. I'm calling it LGT, but as it says London Grand Tournament. As a concept obviously brings in people from all over the world because it's the second, it's huge and it's the second biggest one after LVO. But actually, I think it would be really nice that, we're going to have events in like Nottingham, in Leicester, in Coventry, in other places around the UK, hopefully, where, we'll get to go and see people that we otherwise might not, go and play roll dice with people that we otherwise don't, interact with. I mean, we're quite lucky in London. We obviously have a very big, wargaming club here. Very loads of different like people come in, and it's convenient. People come in from the southeast and whatever, and maybe the Midlands. But for like people who are maybe based up, right up in the north of England, who don't necessarily have the time or to come travel down all the time. It's nice that tournaments are being hosted in other parts of the UK as well, I think, to sort of promote, like, especially big tournaments, to, like, promote the local scene. And there are some big like Into the Hellstorm, obviously, that like Mikey runs. There's the Twisted Dice guys; they've done some like big tournaments as well. So now that it's going to be GTs, I think it's just adding to that, right? It's just growing that scene.
Well, yeah. Also, I think the American ones are so much bigger, so it would be nice to have more tournaments to rival those. Because the Americans always think we're way more competitive, just from listening to other podcasts. And watching Battle Boys. I'm like, no, man. All the tournaments in the UK are so like small, chill. Like most of like the people that you see on battle reports and stuff. It's those guys going, and like that's the they're obviously not like as hardcore competitive as like Art of War, that kind of thing. I was a bit disappointed with these tournaments because when the first one they announced was Leicester, and I thought this was hilarious because I thought, are they just only going to run tournaments in places beginning with L? Like, because it was the LGT company. I was like, they're going to have like a Loughborough Grand Tournament. Like, I don't know.
That would be such a pain in the arse.
I thought that was going to be brilliant, but they didn't.
Loughborough,
they had one in
Leamington,
Nottingham.
Liverpool.
Bastards.
There's loads to escape for it. There's loads to escape for it. There's probably some tiny village. There's probably some like little village somewhere with the ultimate use of L's in Wales. You could have the Welsh GT in Llanelli. Lots of L's in that.
I mean, I would have just gone with Luton, but all right.
Nah, sorry, people. Anybody who listens to this live in Luton. I'm sorry, but no. I went to the airport once. That was more than enough. Oh, you know what it is. You know what it is. I feel sorry. I feel bad about this because I'm sure Luton's a lovely town, but Luton Airport is just objectively terrible.
Yeah. I've been to Luton Airport once, and I think I've been to Luton once as well.
They don't have fences there. Let me put it that way.
We only fly out of Stansted, don't you know? London City, actually.
Bougie son of a bitch.
Yeah, no. But yeah, it's really good. There's going to be loads of competition. So you'll get to see if you are listening and you are coming to these tournaments. You know what? Drop us a comment on our Instagram and tell us how you're going to absolutely destroy us. You probably will. But you'll get to see our lovely smiling faces rapidly reduced to tears at these tournaments.
For 4 people who talk a big game, and then we will go like 1 and 4.
Yeah,
Very depressing podcast the following week.
Yeah, our results. So 0-4, 0-4, 0-4. No, so we're very much small wigs in the world of competitive. But no, it'll be interesting, right? It'll be good. It'll be good to go along, and hopefully we'll get to meet some of you lovely people who tune in and listen to us for some god unknown reason. We actually get to come in and see you in person, which will be good.
Dude, I'll tell you what. We should legit get like Conclave t-shirts. Like, just so people know it's us, because they may not necessarily know our faces.
Are we going shirtless? I thought Richard already.
We're naked. That's
the only reason I've gone back to the gym. I'm going shirtless. I've
got a Conclave tattoo.
We'll all just get neck tattoos that say the Conclave.
No, we have to go for like, oh my god. No, we have to go for like monogrammed like leather jackets, like a bowling, like a 90, you know the 1950s like Grease gangs, right?
Oh yeah.
We can have those on there. Ed has a beautiful little cat called Squire who has just wandered on screen, and Ed needs to bring Squire along in a box as our like little mascot. I would bring my dog. Izzy,
we can make him a little jacket.
I would bring Loki, but he'd kill everyone.
No, he'd just kill you, and we'd all watch.
Yeah, true. Right, so I think we have spoken quite a lot about the competitive scene. So to summarise, don't cheat, be nice, and let's play some Warhammer. But what might be a good opportunity to do now is to maybe move on to the Drukhari Codex, who I have a feeling might be featuring quite a lot in the competitive scene. Saying that, I have no idea what it does. So luckily, we have Adam, who's holding it up eagerly to talk about it.
Yeah, I think Ed's looked at this as well, and Drukhari Codex. It's got some spice.
I've been through it a couple of times now, actually.
let's yeah. I mean, it's one of. Do you know what? Going through it a couple of times is definitely what you have to do, because you look at it and you go, "Hang on a minute, what?" And then you go, "Oh shit, okay."
this was quite a tough video to make actually for us, because in terms of like what you actually have to know, it's like fuck, okay, what you do need to know quite a bit. Really, it's very a lot to save, like it's not time in the video, but to save thought space in your head. Thankfully, a lot of it is becoming more killy, so like you just need to be aware that like especially the characters. All of their, like, in fact, there's only like one Waller trait that's like a fight last. The rest of them are all just like kill more shit. But it is by far and away. I mean, I say by far and away. I haven't mapped it out, but I would guess it's by far and away the killiest book of 9th edition. I don't think anything. It's not anywhere near. It's not resilient at all, but it kills way more than anything else. It's a lot of attacks, a lot of you don't care about strength if you're poisoned, and then a lot of damage too. It's absolutely devastating to be on the receiving end of, I think, if you deploy wrong.
It's definitely, I think it is absolutely a glass cannon. You can build for resiliency. There are ways you can build a Drukhari force to be more resilient than it otherwise would be, and there are lots of things. Like I heard, the ultimate Drukhari authority, Archon Skari of Skardcast, talking about this, and he made the good point that Drukhari have a neat way of like spiking rolls, because we'll go into the rules in a second. But for example, everything pretty much kicks off with a 6-up invuln, right? And it's just between like minuses to hit, between that invuln, which again does improve throughout the game, but we'll get into that in a second. There are situations where they're not resilient on paper 100%, but there are times when between like again minuses to hit and things like that, and creative use of terrain and their movement and their speed and their invulns, actually they can be surprisingly annoying to get rid of. But on the whole, definitely glass cannon.
Yeah. And the racks genuinely are.
Oh yeah,
you can
racks,
upgrade them. They got 4-up invuln, 5-up feel no pain. They're healing through multiple characters. They're a tough one to shift.
Well, they've lost that now. So the 4-up invuln is subject to certain cabal. Sorry, not certain cabal, certain covens. The 4-up invuln is gone.
They can get the 4-up invuln from the upgrade.
From if you make them the Himoxites. Okay.
You can make one an upgrade, and then they can also count the first damage they take as.
Yes. The Himoxites are definitely like solid. But I mean, do you want me to go through Rich quickly, just like what they are overall?
What they are. What they do.
So. Well, the Drukhari, like lore-wise, Drukhari are, in many ways, this is going to upset our friend Charles, who's a big Eldari fan, but the Drukhari are the true Eldar, because we all know what happened to the Eldar. There's big galaxy-spanning empire. They are a species that feels emotion. They feel obsession about things. They get into stuff way more than any other race. And 10,000 years ago, it all started, a bit longer than that, it all started to go a bit wrong, and they started to indulge in behaviours that were, shall we say, slightly more dangerous and deviant than they had been, and there were lots of these cults that grew up, and it very rapidly these pleasure cults turned into kind of getting basically murdering people and doing very horrible dark nonsense to each other and to other species in the galaxy, and all of the psychic energy out of that was what ultimately birthed Slaanesh, the Chaos God, which destroyed, literally blew a hole in the heart of the Eldari Empire, forming the Eye of Terror. Now the Drukhari, go back a second, the Eldar that survived this fall into kind of 3 camps. There are the Exodites, who had left the Eldari Empire to go live a sort of simpler life on worlds at the very edge of the galaxy, and they're the guys who ride around on dinosaurs. The Craft Welders, unsurprisingly, got onto craft worlds and flew off into the rest of the galaxy to get away from the heart of the Eldari Empire, and they have a way of focusing their minds called the Path, where they only do sort of one thing at a time throughout their very, very, very long lives, and that allows them to stave off the obsession, which can ultimately be the downfall of the Eldar. The Drukhari were basically the Eldar who had escaped into the Webway. So as things were getting worse and worse in the Empire, the Webway, which is this kind of extra dimension which connected all of the Eldari planets, and one of the ways that they used to travel around very efficiently wasn't through the warp. They had taken shelter. A lot of them had started to move their holdings into the Webway, and the biggest bit of the Webway, or the most important bit of the Webway for the Drukhari, is the port city of Komora, or Komora, depending on how you want to pronounce it, which is basically this kind of sub-realm in the middle of one of the sort of major nexuses of the Webway that was the most important of the Webway ports during the Eldari Empire, and the noble families who moved in there had basically began to see, I think things are going a bit wrong here, and they wanted to carry on their kind of depraved ways, and they went into the Webway and did it. And obviously, along comes Slaanesh, it all collapses. The Drukhari are the ones that are left living effectively in the Webway. Now, one of the problems the Drukhari have, like all Eldar, is that over time, they get their soul effectively gets sapped away by Slaanesh. She wants to have a little munch on the Eldari, a little lad snack, little amuse-bouche. And the problem that the Eldar as a whole as a species have is previously, prior to Slaanesh, when they died, they just reincarnated, right? They were basically, as well as being very long lives, they were kind of functionally immortal. Now, if they die, their souls get eaten by Slaanesh straight away. The craft world has solved this by using spirit stones. So all the little models, they have all the little jewels on them. When they die, their soul gets sucked into this stone, and then the guys from the craft world take it back and they plug it into something called the Infinity Circuit on the craft world, which lets the soul kind of, zip around in what is essentially like a closed network, and stay alive forever in there. The Drukhari didn't do this. They basically realised, we have a big void at the heart of ourselves that's slowly eating our soul. What if we fill the void up? How do we fill the void up? We fill the void up with the suffering of others. So the Drukhari are, in many ways, one of the most evil factions in the 40k universe. To the extent we can talk about anybody being good, they are sadists. They live off of the pain of others, like quite literally, they live off it. And there's a lot of lore, and you'll see it in the Codex as well, about the idea that Drukhari look kind of, when they haven't almost refreshed themselves off the suffering of others for a very long time, they're like vampires. They become gaunt, and they look like they're kind of a walking corpse. But then when they're around pain and suffering, it literally refreshes them, and they're beautiful. So in many ways, they are like space vampires in some respects. So that's the lore. The way the army works, the best way to think of this is the Drukhari are 3 armies in an army. So there are 3 types of sort of main sub-factions, if you will, but they all end up in the same codex. It's not like supplements with the Space Marines. So you have the Cabals, you have the Covens, and you have the Cults. So the Cabals are the basically supposed to be sort of the noble houses. Think of a combination of like a sort of noble house / pirate gang / criminal enterprise / mafia family. That's basically what they are. They are these organizations. Cool. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it sounds very cool. They are these organizations of Drukhari who they dominate Commorragh. They run the place. The most powerful of them is of the Archons, who are the people who head the Cabals, is a guy called Asdrubal Vecht, who doesn't have a model. He used to, and he is like the over tyrant. And he's got quite a cool story actually, because he started off as a slave, and then he kind of worked his way up, and he broke the noble houses, and he instituted the Cabal system. So they're this sort of weird mix of criminal gang, nobility, pirate type things. And the Cabals have the sort of Cabalite troops, which we'll go into in a second, and the Archons, I guess, are their main characters. The Covens are the Homunculus Covens, given their full title. The Homunculuses are a bit like, how do I put this? Imagine the most insane doctor from a horror movie you possibly can, and then make him a space elf. So the Homunculuses basically live on inflicting pain on others, like all Drukhari, but they also do these experimentations on both other species and on other Drukhari. And they live in the sort of the underdepths of Commorragh. And bear in mind, Commorragh is not like a traditional city in the way we think of it, like a bit of land. It exists in 3D space in the Webway, so it's kind of got, it exists in 3 dimensions. It's crazy. But they kind of live in the sort of the darker underparts of Commorragh, and they have these oubliettes, these dungeons, where they create these kind of ghastly creatures. And their sort of main, I guess, unit that you will see apart from the homunculuses themselves, who are the sort of master surgeon creatures, is the Raks, which is what Ed was just talking about a second ago with Homoxites, who are a type of Rak. But the Raks are basically the troop unit of the Homunculus Covens, and they are basically Eldar who got a bit bored, went down to the Homunculus Covens and went, hey, my life's really boring, excite me, do what you want to me. And doing what you want to me involves like extending their spine, filling them with drugs, giving them extra arms, putting mechanical stuff on them, operating on them, taking their skin off, doing all kinds of horrific nonsense, in theory with the idea that a Rak can work its way up to, in theory, become a homunculus. Homunculuses are very, very, very old as well. No one really knows exactly where they came from, but there's a possibility that they were one of the progenitors of the pleasure cults. And finally, we have the witch cults. And the witch cults are basically like gladiators. So they exist within Komorra to put on shows for the rest of the Drukhari society, which are obviously gladiatorial combats involving lots of blood and lots of death, and they bring slaves in from real space. They engage in these raids along with, again, the Cabal and the Covens, to bring people in, not just for the kind of sustenance of the suffering, but obviously for the spectacle of the show. And Drukhari attend these shows because obviously via the spectacle and via the suffering, they effectively absorb that, and that keeps them alive. The witches are really, really cool. Yeah. It is. Are you not entertained? The witches are really, really cool. They do come in their majority, I guess, female. But if you look at the witch kit, and I've actually got some in front of me now, they do have male members in the witch cults as well. The basic unit is the witch. Again, I'm saying the word witch a lot, but they are the kind of gladiatorial combatants. Their sort of top dog is the succubus, and the succubus is like the leader of a witch cult, and they are like the supreme fighters that you will see on the battlefield, is the idea of those. The witch cults are also interesting because they include other units like Reavers, which are the guys on jet bikes, and Hellions, who are do you remember Green Goblin from like the original Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie when he flies around on that hoverboard? I love the fact he was played by William Dafoe as well. It's just crazy. But yeah, imagine that, but again, a space elf. And the Hellions are these kind of like gangs that live in the spires of Komorra. The Reavers, and they race around the arena alongside the gladiatorial combats, the Hellions and the Reavers, and they fall into the witch cults in the Codex as well. There's also a fourth bit to the army, which is kind of like unaligned, what they call blades for hire. So these are like the sort of mercenary units that are hired largely by cabals, but in theory by witch cults and homunculus covens, to come along with them on real space raids when they go out and try and get slaves, or when they are just like on duty guarding stuff. And the big ones that you'll see a lot on the tabletop are the incubi, who are the kind of they look like sort of angry goats with big huge swords. They're really good, and we'll get into that in a minute. And also the scourges, who are really cool models. Actually, they're the Eldar who, what they do, their lore is also really dark. They're the guys with the big wings on them, and they carry kind of quite heavy guns. And the lore behind those is, again, they're Drukhari who one day they get bored, they go to the homunculus and they're like, make me a scourge. Homunculus goes, no problem, and he surgically hollows out their bones, grafts wings onto their back, fills them with drugs and new muscle structures that allow them to use those wings. And then this is where it gets real dark. In order to become a scourge, you have to quite literally step off the surgical table with all this new stuff attached and fly your way from the bottom of Komorra all the way up to the top of it, to the highest spires, while dodging flying Reaver gangs and cabals that will try and kill you and everything else. And if you get to the top, you get to join the scourges and become one of these kind of avian Drukhari who strike from the sky. Often on your way up, you will see that the top spikes on all the sort of very spiky buildings in Komorra are just covered in corpses, because one of the Scourge's favourite hobbies is to fly down, pick people up, be they slaves or other Drukhari, although they won't risk the wrath of annoying an entire cabal, and then just drop them onto the spikes. Because that's fun, and that's good for them, and again, they enjoy the suffering. So that's a rough overview of the kind of the major categories of units of the army. So again, I think of it as like three armies in one, because the cabals, the witch cults, and the covens all have their own rules, and they all have their own unit sets. And basically the key with the Drukhari Codex in some ways, or a Drukhari army, is balancing those together to achieve what you want. Basically, you have a fantastic toolbox in this codex to do whatever sort of bit of way you want to play the game. You can build it that way, and those are your foundational building blocks.
There is actually one lore question I do have about the codex, because annoyingly I haven't been able to read it yet.
Sure.
One thing I've always found really interesting about the Drukhari in general is the fact that they do use a lot of mercenaries.
Yeah.
So you're dealing with things like the Slith, which are these like reptile people.
Yes, yeah.
Does it say anything about the more use of like mercenaries, or does it really lean into... So in Pirates of the Caribbean, there's that like pirate island that they go to?
Yeah,
I
know what you mean.
Tortuga or something.
Tortuga, yeah.
Yeah.
Tortuga,
Yeah. Like, I would love Komorra to be like a little bit like that, because that would be hilarious, and B, amazing.
Well, there is stuff, and I don't think there's anything that much in this codex about it, but I know in the Drakari lore more generally, as you say, there are other alien species. Like Komora is obviously primarily home to the Drakari, but it is also home to other species like the Slith, which, as you say, Quipstar, they're a really cool little model actually, considering they're like an old resin one. They're like this little snake with 4 arms, and he's got like guns and stuff. But there are these other species they utilize, and it is sort of implied as well that there are places in Komora where, like as you say, mercenaries, possibly potentially humans, can go to. They probably don't want to stick around too long because otherwise they'll end up as somebody's soul lunch in some ways. But there are
Fabius Bile
elements
made
of
it.
that.
Didn't he?
Yeah,
So why not?
Fabulous
I
Bill.
was
He
just about to
learned
say.
he learned all of his little tricks from the homunculuses, or the homunculi, I should say. He went in there and asked them to teach him how to do gross surgical nonsense. And they were like, "Yeah, no worries, man. Come on board."
Oh, wow.
I find it funny as well, the Slith barely get mentioned, but the only times I've ever really seen them get mentioned are in, I think it was Dante, where, they're talking about, because, obviously the Blood Angels, one of the first things they ever have to do is, learn how to, do art, and so there's a bit at which the Blood Angels are fighting some Slith, and one of the Blood Angels goes to Dante, oh, if you kill one, can you keep its hide for me? Their leather, their skin makes fantastic leather when you tan it. I'd like to make a couch or a chaise lounge or something. And he's just like, sorry, I shot it full of holes. It's not going to be very good for that. And the guy's like, oh, for God's sake.
The Slith are quite
What's
fun
a
as well.
chaise-longue?
Chaise lounge, like a little like a
couch.
chair couch thing, yeah.
Yeah.
But the Slith are quite funny actually in the lore, because one of the things about them is that the Drakari. So within the Cabals, again, we're going into lore. We will do rules, I promise. But in the Cabals, the way you get to the top is basically by stabbing the guy above you in the back. For an Archon, for a Drakari Archon, one of the reasons they get to the top is because they're paranoid, and they're continually worried about the idea that if they don't constantly show strength and they don't make people afraid of them, even their own Cabal, that they will do them in and try and replace them. So one of the things they do is they have bodyguards who are normally either incubi, because basically they take a loyalty oath that they take very seriously, and incubi will not turn on whoever they're kind of contracted to, or they use Slith, because the Slith are basically too stupid to come up with the idea. That is literally the law behind them, is that they're too dumb to even think of the idea of killing, even though they could very easily kill whoever they're working for. They're like, nah, we wouldn't even think of that. Doesn't even occur to them. So they're not loyal, but they're also too stupid to be disloyal. So they make really good bodyguards. So that's, the Slith are quite fun.
See, that's what I look for in my bodyguards. Stupidity.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, should we run through? Do you want to run through some of the sort of high level rules, like how to build the army and stuff?
Yeah, for sure. And also, I'm
Well,
quite interested in picking out what the most improved unit is in there, because I think
Sure.
you mentioned Incubi before. So that might be
Incubi and
good.
Witches, I'd say, are two of the big ones. I think Hellions are another one. But we can
What
talk
do
about
witches
those.
do now?
What shall I? Yeah, a lot. It's all right.
Jump around.
Should we just run through the detachment sort of structure as well, because it is quite unique, and it's worth, I guess, thinking about just if you are trying to get into Drakari, or if you come across Drakari. I'll just do this quickly. So one of the things, again, with the Drakari, going back to this 3 armies in an army theme, is that when you build a Drakari army, you basically can do it one of 2 ways, essentially. So you can either build it out of a series of patrols, or you can build, they've got this new thing in this new codex called the Real Space Raid. So the patrol thing existed before, right? So this was called the Raiding Forces rule, which is basically, if every detachment in your army is a Drakari keyword patrol detachment, change the command cost of those detachments to 0 CP. So, and then all the Cabal units in a Cabal patrol get their special rules, or which units in their patrol get their special rules, and all Homunculus Coven units in their patrol get their special rules. What's quite interesting about this is that now, because of the way it works, and obviously the way that patrols give you you basically, they cost you 2 CP, this means that if you did a 2,000 point game with 3 patrols, you would actually start off with 14 CP, because you don't pay anything for the patrols. So you get extra CP as a Drukhari player. So that's one to look out for. Also, with the way this is worded now, in theory, in a like combat patrol game, because the rule is now just a patrol costs you 0 CP if it has the Drukhari keyword. If you're in a combat patrol game or even like a 1,000-point game, which is called Incursion, I think, in the rulebook, again, if you had a patrol, you would effectively get extra CP. So it's something to be aware of if you come up against Drukhari players. The real space raid is the other one, and that's basically always going to be a battalion. Because the way that works is you have to have one Archon, so that's the Cabal kind of HQ character, one Succubus, again, Witch Cult HQ character, and one Homunculus, so the Coven HQ character. So you have your 3 HQ slots filled. You have to include one Cabalite Warriors unit, one Witch unit, and one Rack unit. So again, one troop unit from each of the sort of subcategories. And basically, if you follow those rules and it's a battalion or in theory a brigade, I guess you could have, then and the Archon has to be the warlord of all of this. Then you basically, even though they're all in the same detachment, they all get to keep their individual special rules. So the witches can get their obsession. They're called obsessions, basically. They're like their chapter tactics almost. The witches get their obsession, the covens get their obsession, and the Cabalites get their obsession, and they don't kind of cancel each other out. So it means they all work together. In addition, your Archon, now who's your warlord, his ability to reroll ones to hit as an HQ character extends to all core units, not just Cabalite units. So it extends, not just Cabalite core units. So it extends to the witches, the racks that you're going to have from the homunculus covens, and to any other unit with a core keyword. So instantly, your Archon, your warlord, becomes a force multiplier across a much wider range of models. So that is a build that's brand new. It is a little bit complicated, and if that was too fast to run through, I suggest you go and just have a look at the book, because they do include, and this is a new thing for GW, they do include like a diagram example of how you would build it, which I think is quite cool in the codex. Yeah, they have like a little diagram cool. That tells you how to do it. So those are the two ways in which you'll generally see Drukhari. Basically, either an army that is a series of patrols, or this new real space raid battalion / again in theory brigade that you can run. And both of them give you unique benefits in how you build your army. The other thing to say about on the detachment side of things is souping has basically gone, because obviously one of the things you often saw with Eldari is building Eldari soup. So they have a new rule in here called Weakling Kin, which says that you cannot include Drukhari and non-Drukhari Eldari units in the same detachment unless all those units have the Ynnari keyword. So this basically gets you, this basically, obviously, you would lose special rules anyway, but this basically gives you an even bigger disincentive to run them, because you'd be running them as Ynnari. They're not going to be Drukhari anymore.
Does that give any kind of
slight tangent?
Sorry, but before you go off in a different direction, I get a question to probably Ed as well. But does this book give you an idea of what might come further down the line for Ynnari or other Eldar books? Do you think with that particular phrase?
Well, so that's actually not so much of a change, the Weakling King, but it does tell us that hopefully, because the problem with Ynnari is that it's tough to write them in a way that they would be worthwhile taking, but not at the same time just better than everything else, because if you have access to more things, you have more choices, so you'll just take the best of each book. However, as Adam says, with that rule, you can take it in the same detachment, so hopefully what this means is that Ynnari detachments will now be fully mixed. And at that point, the Ynnari rules could be essentially slightly weaker than the Drukhari and the Craftworld books, but the power as an Ynnari player comes from the fact that you can take Harlequin jet bikes, Drukhari Incubi and Eldar Wave Serpents in the same little detachment. And I think that would be something that would be very cool.
I mean, this is the thing as well with Ynnari. If we look at the Drukhari Codex, it's very thematic from everything I've seen. It plays exactly like you would want a Drukhari Codex to play. It's the same with Death Guard, have very thematic rules, and I think to a degree Space Marines as well. So I think Drukhari and Eldari have very distinct ways that people think they should play. Eldar should be tricksy, Drukhari should be super glass cannons. Whereas Yanari, I don't know what their thing is. Do you know what I mean?
Drukhari have thrown the Inari in my eyes because Inari in 8th edition were the combat Eldar, and now Drukhari are quite far and away
The combat Eldar.
the combat Eldar.
Yeah.
So they can make them a bit more combat-y. Yeah, I like the idea that the power of the Eldar, in not exactly the same, but kind of the same way that Deathwatch work. As in, like, a lot of the power from Deathwatch isn't necessarily in the raw power of that book, but it's the fact that you kind of have more options than you have compared to other Space Marine factions. And so if you're super clever and you want to go for specific playstyles, you can do that. So I am very excited for what they do with Inari. We will see. Plus, they got a big monster, so that's always helpful.
I hope they get like a supplementary codex.
I think
That
so.
would be ideal.
I think they will, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I really hope they just make it a proper soup. And I'm not gonna lie, I am really glad. Like, you can still take detachments of Drukhari, but you lose power from pain now. That's something we should mention, I guess, is that power from pain was a ability that Drukhari have always had, but they've now made it their faction-specific bonus if you have everything except like unaligned that is Drukhari, which is interesting because obviously that will explain why Admech are next, for example, because it's very hard for the rules writers to keep coming up with faction-specific bonuses that are unique and interesting. Admech have obviously got theirs because they will just make the word has gone from my mind. What's the word I'm looking for?
Oh, Canticles.
Canticles. They will make Canticles their faction-specific bonus, and
What
so
would you do without me?
So exactly. We'll see. So that I think that's really exciting that all factions are getting this because I Drukhari and Eldar, they were souped so much. I think people have forgotten how much the Drukhari and the Craftworlds hate each other. Like, they hate each other so
Oh,
much.
yeah.
Like, Inari are the only thing that can unite them. Like, they loathe each other. Like, they would stop fighting Space Marines to go and kill each other. Like, that's the level of hatred between them.
Yeah, they're not big fans of each other.
See, like, I look at them as the difference between, like, very liberal people who, like, spend a lot of time at sex parties and, like, very puritanical Christians. Like, there's not a lot of overlap.
I mean,
there.
they do. There's a lot of fun stuff in the lore actually, where the Drukhari there's a very good series part. I mean, there's Path of the Eldar, but there's Path of the Drukhari as well, which is like a 3-part book, which is very good. Which goes into this a bit. One of the things they always do when they talk about their craft worlds, they talk about them as being like, our kind of monkish, like ascetic brethren who and they view them as these like these fools who've gone off and think they can escape from their ultimate fate by sort of pretending to be ascetic or whatever, and
holier than thou.
Yeah. They view them like that. So I don't know. The Drukhari are quite cool. They're very dark, but they're quite cool from a lore perspective.
So what we're saying is that the Eldari or the not the Inari, the Asuryani don't have any cool sex parties. And it's just
I don't
kinda
think
sucks
so.
to be them.
I don't think they're allowed to.
I'll ask them to invite you to one.
So I mean, maybe we on that we
go
should.
on a wild tangent right now.
I was saying, maybe on that, as Ed's mentioned it, we should just talk about the abilities that are sort of common across the army. So power from pain being one. So I mean, Ed, do you want to run through power from pain?
So power from pain is a cool ability where, and this is poor Necrons, so much better than
Yeah, I know.
It's so much better than what Necrons get. It's really not fair.
Sad beeps.
I hopefully Necrons will get some points reductions to account for these things. But so power from pain it means that each turn the Drukhari, all the units in the army, which is another change because now it's like all of the vehicles are benefiting from this. They all get invuns. They can shoot in combat now. Anyway, so each turn they get another bonus, and these things stack. So I'm going off the top of my head. I haven't got the book open. So turn 1, it's a 6-up invuln. Turn 2, they can advance and charge. And turn 3, they get a 5-up invuln. Turn 4, vehicles can shoot into combat. And they get +1 to hit in turn 2. Have I got that the wrong way around?
So turn 3
What?
is add 1 to hit rolls in melee. Turn
Yeah.
4 is your 5-up invuln. So you were right, just in slightly wrong order.
Yeah, and then turn 6 is like you count as double the wounds on vehicles, I think, and you can't fail. Turn 5, sorry, double the wounds on vehicles, and you can't fail morale. And incredibly
Wait.
powerful. And to clarify, a lot of these things, like to clarify how powerful this is. So my favorite is Reavers. So Reavers, there's many ways in the book. Well, not many. There's a few ways in the book to count as from turn 2 onwards, turn 1, and Reavers move 26 inches.
Because they get the auto advance,
Yeah.
don't they? Yeah.
And so for turn 1, Reavers can be... And to clarify, there are also a bunch of ways... That's without combat drugs, which we'll talk about as well. That's without the Reaver and Hellion strat. They can move like so... They can just get like easily 40 inches across the board turn 1. They will kill all of
Jesus
your characters
Christ.
if you're not careful.
Yeah.
They're so fast.
'Cause-
I mean,
the other thing
I'm
on
still
top of
stuck
that...
on the fact that...
Oh, no, go on.
I was just going to say, I'm still stuck on the fact that your entire army can advance and charge.
Oh, yeah.
And they're a notoriously fast army.
Yeah, it's...
What?
It's,
So
it's
let me just
pretty
With
grab
a
this
wild.
book
5-up invuln?
Let
it's
me
pretty
just grab this
wild.
book
It's
before
pretty
I
wild.
start going through the rules. That
So
would have been a smart move.
Well, I mean, like to Ed's point, like to go into like an interesting build, right? So the other thing this army has, and again we'll go into combat drugs and stuff in a second. The other thing the Drukhari have overall is like a hell of a lot of ways to put out mortal wounds. Right, there are so many ways in this book that you can just dole out mortal wounds, often in quite interesting ways. So one of the cool ones with the Reavers, the unit that Ed mentions there, is they can have their grav talons. Which mean that they can like go into combat and put out mortal wounds on the unit. They have a rule called eviscerating flyby if they fly over a unit. You know, so again, think
That's
about the fact you're
Hellions.
like, yeah, but Reavers can do eviscerating flyby, I think as well. I think it's Reavers
I
and
think
Hellion
it's-
units.
Oh, is it? Oh, I thought it was...
I might be wrong. It might be Hellions only. Let's have a look. Let's have a look.
Oh no, it's just Witchcott unit that can fly. Sorry, my
Yeah,
mistake.
okay, yeah,
I think
yeah, so-
yeah, and the reason I looked at this is because Reavers, Hellions, you take in squads of 20. So the reason
Yes.
this is bananas is because, generally speaking, GW operate on the rule of either literally or just mathematically, you're going to max at about 3 mortal wounds. This will be 10.
10. Yeah.
10 more wounds against infantry.
Jesus.
I don't know how many. Yeah, and how many models can you take in a squad of Reavers?
So Reavers is 12, I think.
12, right? I
Yeah.
guess that's what. Yeah, so Hellions is 20.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, you can they can just do, and they're still pretty fast. So they can just do 10 mortal wounds in a squad of infantry. So have fun, they're equipped with your Custodes. And
Well, I saw on,
that's
on the,
dead squad of Custodes. That's
Oh
just,
yeah, I mean on the
Yeah.
Hellions thing, I heard some math whereby what is it, a 20-man unit of Hellions is one of the only units in the army where you can pretty much guarantee to kill something like a Catan in a single turn, because they can do mortal wounds in the movement phase. They can do mortal wounds. They can do mortal wounds in the movement phase. They can shoot at it in the shooting phase. They can do mortal wounds on the charge, and then in combat they can then wound it. So, you know, with a unit of 20 Hellions, with the amount of attacks again with combat drugs on top, like they can probably one shot a Catan, you know,
Yeah.
which is crazy.
And on Mortal Wounds, there was
unreal.
one I thought was quite funny. That's quite minor, because a lot of the warlord traits and relics are not bad. They just make things much more killy. But there's one relic, I believe, which is they might as well just call it a Mortal Wound Bomb. That's exactly what it does. It just does like D3 plus 3. Now D3, the target suffers D3 mortal wounds, then it can suffer enough for D3 plus 3 mortal wounds. No, yeah, if it's got 11 plus models. So it's just a lot of mortal wounds if they want, which is cool.
I mean, to go on, keep going on this train. Like a good example of this is the Void Mine on the Void Raven Bomber, which is the big flyer unit,
Yeah.
which a lot of people have talked about. Or, you know, obviously flyers in 9th edition are not great, but a lot of people are talking about bringing the Void Raven just because of the psychological threat. Because the Void Mine, so I'll just find the data sheet, but basically it's a once per game bomb that you can drop, you know, on somewhere that the Void Raven bomber flies over, and it basically you pick that spot, and then in a 6-inch radius from that spot that you basically say, right, that's where it's dropped its Void Mine. Everything within that takes D6 mortal. Sorry, on a 4+ takes D6 mortal wounds, subtracting 1 if it's a character unit. So if you imagine you've got your Tau Castle or your Imperial Fist Castle, and somebody flies a Void Raven bomber over the top of it, I mean, obviously it has to go off on a 4+, but like that's D6 mortal wounds a time. That's like a lot of. That's like a big threat. Like that can change how you would deploy your army straight away.
Well,
Yeah.
I think what, and this is what's so interesting to me. So I think the reason from like the game that's so interesting to me is because there has been a premium from the rules writers on things that do mortal wounds from a point in a bubble. So, for example, it's very expensive CP wise, or always has been, to use the orbital strike. It costs you a lot of points. However, in this book, they're like, oh, and it's like how, for example, with Vect, they remove it, and then Nemesis or Zendras is like, oh, you just get this. It's they have. It's so like I'm so interested to think about what the thought process they have for these things is, because and there's a lot of things in this book. The best example being Fight Last, where it's like, oh, this is a really powerful ability, but it's quite rare. And then no. So it's
Is it now?
Yeah, I think it's. I guess it's like Rich, you asked about like the kind of the lessons we can get for things to come. It's like every faction is going to get a thing or things that they do better than everybody else, and that's going to be very interesting for them to balance. Because
So with Custodes, it's just going to be everything.
Okay, yeah, I mean, Custodians, I'm fascinated to see what they do.
Yeah, see what they do with that.
I think I was watching Titans yesterday, and and I think he was making a point. He was like, you could literally like double the attacks on Custodes, and from this book, and it probably wouldn't. You wouldn't think that's gonna like make the game ridiculous in the favor of Custodes. That's the level of buff.
Yeah.
That, and I think that. Yeah, and honestly, they can give Custodes any buffs as long as they remove 3 pin buttons. I'm fine with it.
I mean, it's literally just like Stig was saying last week. Custodes are not a killy army. We need more power.
Yeah.
Well, it's sort of that D3 damage, isn't it? We always talk about.
Also, every I mean, they've done it with Death Guard, so hopefully it comes through. Every model with certain weapons needs a sweep attack.
Yeah.
You need a way to deal with hordes.
Hordes,
and that's an easy solution, right? So
I think I mean, as we've done Power from Pain, should we quickly run through just the other army again to add on top of Quipster's like, oh my god, what is this? The other army-wide abilities. So poisoned weapon is one you'll see a lot with the Drukhari. That again is like a unique thing they have. So poisoned weapon is basically you'll see on the value it'll be like poison 2+, poison 4+. So 4+ is the more common one because that's the splinter rifle that the Kabalite warrior troops carry is a poison 4+. Subject to again things that can modify that. And that basically the rule is on an unmodified wound roll of whatever that value is, so 4+, 2+, whatever, it's a wound on an infantry unit, on anything that's not vehicle and titanic.
They can pay 2
actually.
CP to make it work on vehicles anyway. So
yes,
they
metallotoxins.
they like if they've got that big unit, they will tear through vehicles anyway.
And there is a Cabal trait to make it a 3+ as well. So if you want to lean into poison, you can do it.
Yeah,
that's what I was going to ask. How does that interact with transhuman physiology?
It doesn't.
Yeah, it doesn't. Sadly, yeah.
It's funny. It nearly does. It's missing like one line, and then it would do. But essentially, the way it works is genuinely quite complicated. So the rules book actually says if any units say always wounds on this and always can't be wounded on this, the attacker wins. So the attacker would win. However, because in transhuman says regardless of any other rules. And poison doesn't have that little bit of wording. If poison had that little bit of wording, then poison would win.
The attacker would win.
Yes, yeah.
But because poison doesn't, transhuman does. So yeah, Deathwing will be all right, but I don't think Drukhari will be too scared of Deathwing.
No. Till they give us a surprise FAQ and they're like, oh no, it does. We're going to add that regardless of any other rules line, and then everyone's like, oh my god.
They could do. I mean, they've also got those 10 mortal wounds and fight last. And so I think that'll be an interesting game. I think Drukhari have such a skill curve. Like that's like Deathwing, like Dark Angels are very different in that respect. I think Dark Angels book is very good, but I think that it's why the Drukhari book is excellent. It's because like you will see Drukhari players in a 100-player tournament like 90th, and you'll see them in top 10 because like it'll be such a breadth. Whereas there's quite a skill flaw with Dark Angels as long as you can just sit on an objective.
I think that's a Space Marine thing as well. We've
the beginner army,
before.
right?
Like I used Space Marines for the first ever time at 2,000 points yesterday, and I was just like, oh, this actually isn't that bad. like because they're not actually that tricksy. It's very point and click,
Yeah.
whereas Drukhari are just like not that at all, from what I'm understanding here.
Yeah, the Drukhari, I think they're a lot like, in many ways, a lot like the Sisters, and I'm sure a lot like GSC actually, from what Ed's, the way Ed plays them, in that like there's a lot of overlapping stuff that you have to. Basically, again, it's this idea of a toolbox, right? There's a lot of units in here which hit incredibly hard, and you can max them out to do crazy stuff. But then, you also sort of need to think about how they interact with the army overall and how you build the army as a whole. It's not like, a unit, as you say, a unit of Space Marines, you can go stick a unit of Intercessors on an objective and, they'll probably hold it for quite a while, and they'll shoot some stuff while they're doing it. Like, you sort of need to think about how everything interacts and these sort of overlapping bubbles and auras, and then, like, when you're going to play your strats at the right time. That I think there is a level of kind of, especially with these, because they've got these three not very different, but three sort of separate sub armies in an army. It's even more complicated. So it's like that to another level, I guess.
I think that we're going to see new ways of playing this game. I'm just playing this army for like the next 6 months coming up regularly.
There's
it's
so
be really
many.
interesting. Because, like, for example, the one that I would play, just from my own playstyle, is I would take lots of like small squads of witches and trade up continually throughout the game, because this witch squad is just not that expensive and it can kill something worth way more. And I would happily play Quipster and like with Custodes, which is very tough matchup with Quipster, to be fair. But even there's Imperial Fist, for example, and like he'd feel like he's killing witches every turn. But then I'm still going to have like a whole bunch left by the end of the game. So I think that's the one. But also you can just go if you really want to just build into the Alpha Strike, which is probably going to be tough to win a tournament with. But we're talking about all those mortal wounds. Like you could for those with that Reaver movement, you're going to be taking out characters. You have a whole bunch of ways to play this, and likewise you can, like you say, you can kind of build into kind of a classic list. You can take, if you just do a real space raid, you got Rax to hold the back field, you got Cabal to hold the middle field, and you got Witches to hold, and Incubi to hold the front field. So it's kind of it's really up to you.
This is, as I say, definitely a toolbox. I think. Just quickly to run through the other ones, everyone gets Blade Artists. That's something you'll see. Basically means on a 6, additional AP -1. Again, something that like only certain units get in a lot of other armies. Drukhari, anyone that's got the Blade Artist keyword get that. I think vehicles have got Blade Artists, which is hilarious.
Yeah, I think it's literally just not the planes. I believe.
Basically everyone's got it, which is brilliant.
Put little swords on the side of the vehicles.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we can get, when we talk about specific units later, we can get into like combat transports, which I think is hilarious. But anyway, Insensible to Pain is the Homunculus Covens one. So basically, they have a 5-up Feel No Pain. So they used to have, what was it? Again, aside from Prophets of Flesh with the 4-up, they used to have a baseline. Was it a 5-up Invuln and then I think a 6-up Feel No Pain? And they basically almost switched that around with the Power from Pain table now.
Yeah, but then from turn 3.
To 3, they go to 5-up,
and then you can upgrade
become
one
Plague
squad.
Bearers.
Because one thing that's quite cool in this book is you can have like a top squad of it if you're Cabal, Witches, Homunculus, or Cabalites, which is really cool from like a modelling perspective when they do things like this. Because now you can be like, this is my squad of Trueborn, which is the Cabalite version, and obviously you can give them like extra trophies. I'm sure lots of dead people attached to whatever it's going to be, which I think is really fun.
Yeah. I mean, let's touch on that quickly, I guess, because that's actually a good point. So, with what Ed's talking about there is basically if you take, like in the Space Marine Codex, you can upgrade your, your chapter command effectively. So you can have obviously Chief Apothecary, you can have Master Librarian, etc. There's very similar rules for the Drukhari, and you can have a Master Archon, a Master Succubus, and a Master Homunculus, and they get their own abilities. So if you have, and sorry, just to be clear, the reason I'm going into these characters is because you have to have one of these to then unlock what is called their favoured retinue, which then allows you to pay the upgrade points to get these like special Cabalites, special witches, and special racks. So the Cabalite, basically, if you become a Master Archon, obviously it gives you access to a particular Warlord trait and a relic. I won't go into those too much now, although the relic Soul Helm, which is the one you get as a Cabalite, is really good. Every time an attack made against that bearer, you subtract 1 from the hit roll, and each time the bearer loses a wound, they get a 5-up Feel No Pain. So if you want to build a tanky Archon, It's quite a cool one. But the ability they get for free as part of this, well, not for free, but if you pay for this upgrade, is they get Splintered Genius, which means once per battle at the end of the fight phase, if the model is in engagement range of any enemy units, it can fight again for free. So if you build a very fighty Archon, you can just have him fight again for free. The Witch Cult, this is, again, going into the theme of witches being really good. This is called the Witch Cult Spectacle. So you have a Master Succubus, she becomes a show stealer, and each time this model makes a consolidation move, it can move an additional 3 inches, and it does not have to finish this move closer to the closest enemy model. That's really powerful. She can go in, she can slap you around, and then she just consolidate out of combat. Like, it's really good. It's really good.
I mean,
yeah.
There's one of those in the Custodes Codex, and it's called
Unstoppable Destroyer.
for a
Yes.
reason.
Yeah. That's why I thought you'd like that. And the homunculus one, it's the homunculus proclivity. If I can pronounce it. Yes, they get Alchemical Maestro, which is once per battle when this model is destroyed, you can choose to roll 1d6 at the end of the phase instead of using any rules that are triggered when this model is destroyed. If you do so, then on a 2+, set this model back up on the battlefield as close as possible to where they were destroyed, but not within engagement range of any enemy models with D3 wounds remaining. So you can basically have a homunculus that gets back up. A sort of discount Celestine, if you will. Now, the favoured retinues, which is what Ed was talking about, these, so let's say you upgrade your Master Archon, Master Succubus, Master Homunculus. This is what you get. So you get Cabalite Trueborn. So for each Master Archon you have, you can basically upgrade a 10-man unit of Cabalite warriors to be Trueborn. And Trueborn have the following rules. Models in this unit have a ballistic skill characteristic of 2+. Cool. Add 1 to the leadership characteristic of models in this unit. Cool. This is where it gets good. Each time a model in this unit makes a ranged attack, you ignore any or all roll and ballistic skill modifiers. So
That's really annoying.
you get a unit of these guys, you stick a Dark Lance on them, which is a D3 plus 3 damage heavy weapon. You stick a couple of blasters on them, which are basically melter guns. And but they're 18-inch, and they're always D6 plus 2 melter rule at 18-inch. And you're hitting everything on a 2+. Oh, I'm -1 to hit. I don't care. You're taking the hit. Sorry. Oh, I've moved with the heavy weapon. Yeah, I'm hitting you on a 2+. I don't care. Oh, my Archon's there. I'm re-rolling 1s. So if you want a unit in the mid board that can sort of move, and again, bear in mind how quick Drukhari are, that can zip about and on a 2+ be a very reliable source of, fairly cheap anti-tank. I think this tops out about 90 because these go to, because they're 8 points a model for regular Cabalites, I think they go up to 10 points for a Trueborn. So you're basically looking at a 100-point unit that can just roll around and, murder stuff. Stick them in a Raider. Raider's 90 points as transport option, so 190 points. You've got yourself a very reliable anti-tank force. On the Witches side of things, their special unit is called a Hecatrix Bloodbride. So for each Master Succubus or Lelith Hesperyx, who's the special character from the Cult of Strife, 1 unit of Witches in the same detachment can be upgraded. Again, 10-person unit. And they gain the Hecatrix Bloodbride keyword and have the following additional abilities. Weapon skill characteristic of 2+, pretty good. Add 1 to the leadership characteristic, pretty good. Each time an attack made by this model in the unit would trigger the Blade Artist's ability, i.e. on a 6. The armor penetration characteristic increases, by that attack is increased by 3 instead of 1. So they become Gene Stealers in many ways, because most of the Witch weapons are AP -1 anyway, they go up to AP -4. So that's pretty
It's not
nuts.
bad,
And they're
is it?
hitting on 2s. Obviously on rolls of 6s, but it's still good. The Himoxites, which is the Coven version. So again, for each Master Homunculus or Urian Rakarth, which is their special character. Again, 10-person unit. Improve the unit's save characteristic, and so basically regular save and invulnerable save by 1 to a maximum of 4+. So this was, to Ed's point, how you start the game in turn 1 with a 5+, and then by turn 3 it goes to a 4+. Add 1 to leadership. Okay, fine. And once per phase, this is mental. Once per phase, the first time a saving throw is failed for this unit, the damage characteristic of that attack is reduced to 0.
Oh my god, what?
What? Shoot me with your melter guns.
Wait, say that again?
Once per phase, not per battle round, the first time a saving throw is failed for this unit, the damage characteristic of that attack is changed to 0.
So there's literally just computer says no.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that. It's not that
What?
strong. Like that's
Yeah,
like
because it's once per
infiltrators have
phase,
this
right?
rule.
Yeah.
Like it's like I mean, like you're not gonna fire a melter at a rack. If you've done that, you've already something's
You've
gone
made a
wrong.
mistake.
Like,
You're just that angry at it.
yeah, it's just but
Still,
it's a
Jesus.
nice. It's a nice. To be honest, I actually really like things like that because to me that is we want to add a bit of survivability to this unit,
Spice.
but we don't just want to increase the save and the vulnerable feel no pain. We're going to do something a little bit different. So when they do interesting mechanics like that, it's just flavor, isn't it? So that's all that is.
It's really cool.
Don't let that freak you
But-
out.
I am freaked out, but I mean, like, as a new Marine player, I'm just sort of thinking, like, and as guys who've read the Codex, what are the big things as a Marine player that I need to be really worried about here? Like,
Oh, God, where do you
is
wanna
there
start?
A thing where you can
Well, I mean, it's probably worth just quickly mentioning, going back a little bit and just talking about combat drugs, because one of the things, obviously,
Okay.
the Blood Brides, right, is it gives you that weapon skill 2 up, and like Ed was saying earlier, we should talk about combat drugs because which keyword units get combat drugs, and basically there are other ways of getting one of which is a combat drug. I mean, I'm giving away what I'm about to say, but there are ways of getting that weapon skill up to a 2+ anyway. So you might not want to pay for the Blood Brides potentially if you're a Drakari player. So combat drugs, basically, again, it's like a D6 table. You can pick one or you can roll 2. And to run through them quickly, on a roll of 1, Adrenalite, each time the unit fights, if it made a charge move or performed a heroic intervention, this turn until that fight is resolved, add 1 to the attack's characteristic. Very good. 2, Grave Lotus, add 1 to the strength characteristic of models in this unit. 3, Hypex, add 2 inches to the move characteristics of models in this unit. 4, Painbringer, add 1 to the toughness characteristic of models in this unit. 5, Serpentin, improve the weapon skill characteristic of models in this unit by 1. And 6, Splintermine, improve the ballistic skill and leadership characteristics of models in this unit by 1. So basically, they're all very good. So I think you are going to see Drakari players rolling for these, potentially. They might pick them.
Well, I think they're before the battle, if I'm not mistaken, right? Also, so
They are, yes. Yeah,
So
yeah.
the thing that's really cool about this is because then your opponent gets to tailor a little bit against you. So if you're if you have that perfect strength to take down Reavers and your opponent's got a lot of Reavers, they can be like, cool, we'll add 1 to toughness, make you wound on 5s. If they're like, oh, you're a horde army, we'll take that attack potentially. So yeah, I mean, rolling for it is certainly a valid way, but that's the other thing you can do is you can really tailor, and that's the thing that GW in 9th edition have removed a lot of in the game. So it's really interesting to try and it's thrown me. I think I know where their head's at, and then they're like, oh no, we're doing this. And I'm like, whoa.
You can't.
Also, the other thing about this combat drugs table, and I say this as a Sisters player, is if you roll a double on the table, you roll again until you get 2 different results.
Oh, instead
Why
of
can't I have that for
you
my
just get
why
one.
can't I have that for my Sisters litany, which is just you roll a double, you just get 1. Thanks, games. No, I'm kidding. They're very good. They're a very good army. But yeah, it's just again, it's interesting to Ed's point about like book design is that they threw that in as well. So the disincentive to rolling, as it were, aside from the randomness, is even less. But yeah, they're as you can see, they're pretty nuts.
But remember, Alex, your question: glass cannon. So
Yeah,
you just
yeah.
need
I mean,
to kill him quicker than they
everything's
kill you.
T3. pretty much. I mean, aside from the combat drugs, and there are other units in the army which are tougher, right? But
Yeah.
they're still Eldari. Most of the stuff you're going to be up against, like even witches, incredibly fighty, incredibly powerful, but they are T3, right? They're not impossible to kill. So be scared of them, but there are
I'm
ways.
still wounding them on 2s with my Custodes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
I
Big
think
biceps of yours.
I think the biggest point to take away, I guess, is it's kind of what Richard earlier about like what does this tell you about things to come. I think it's just so exciting, is the answer. Like this is a real everything. This book is really interesting to me because to me they haven't. I don't know how other people feel. They haven't changed the direction of Drukhari. I feel it's more of the fact that they going in the same direction in 8th edition. They just weren't brave enough. And there's been I've got that sense quite a lot in the 9th edition books. They just feel more brave because they're tentative with a lot of rules a lot of the time. Like and now they're like, oh, you know what? Because the fight last mechanic is in the game. It's in the game, so if it's in the game, there's no reason it can't be a bit more widespread. If it's either broken or it's not. If it's not broken, it can be a core part of the army, which is.
But Ed, this is like something we talked about ages ago. In that, with 8th edition, because it was such a revolutionary change in the rule set, Games Workshop didn't quite understand what they could do with it. And now going to ninth edition, there's a lot more playtesters. They understand what they can do and what they can change and what they can like play around with in the rule set. And so now they're getting to the point where in ninth edition they can just kind of go crazy because they know what to do.
Yeah, I
Because
think
they have the experience there.
no, totally. I totally agree, and I think with one minor exception, there's nothing in this book that I don't think is so stupid. And in fact, there's not really anything in ninth edition that I don't think is so stupid that it can't be fixed with points. That was the problem with eighth edition, is that it kind of, there was some, and seventh edition more so. It was the case of like there are some things that were so bananas, it doesn't matter what you point them at, they're always going to be stupid. Whereas like if right now, like, for example, I might say the Hellion strat might want to max at say a measly 5 mortal wounds, but like outside of that, there's not really there's some Cult of Strife stuff that is maybe a bit much, but the book is generally pretty. I think it's pretty not necessarily balanced now, but balanceable. And that's kind of what we want right now, right? So,
I mean, one thing I will say about this, and I mean, we can go into and I guess this isn't supposed to be a full review show, but we can go into the various cabals, but there is some stuff in here which is like I just think is proper troll material. But in like a good way, in like kind of a funny way. So, for example, there's a cabal like what you can do like a Build-A-Bear in the same way you can with Space Marine traits. You can do like a Build-A-Bear for cabals, covens, and witch cults. And one of the cabal ones, it's called Dark Mirth, right? Which the rule is Dark Mirth Aura. While it is within 12 inches of this unit, each time an enemy unit is selected to make a normal move, advance, fall back, or is selected to charge, roll 1d6 on a 5+. That enemy unit suffers 1 mortal wound.
So 1 mortal wound if you fall
so
back.
you move. No, if you charge, if you advance, or you fall back, you just take a mortal wound. It's on a 5+, but can you imagine how annoying that would be to play against? Yeah, this is what I'm saying. It's like a troll. It's not competitive, but it's like such a troll tactic.
there's a fun Drukhari one, which is actually a hangover from not Cabal, is Cabal. No, sorry, not Cabal. It's a Coven one, which is a hangover from 8th with Dark Technomancers, which is I think quite funny. Which basically just makes every weapon they have plasma. Essentially, as in like they get +1 damage, like I think +1 strength, and then they take mortal wound on ones, but they have flamers, they have character sniping weapons. They're a lot of fun.
It's +1 to wound, +1 damage. +1 to wound, +1 damage. It's nuts. So you can have people talk about, like as Ed's saying, people talk about the there's a flamer gun called a liquefier, which has gone to 12 inches, and you can have 2 of them in a unit of 5-man racks. Or you can have them on Taloses as well, which are one of the other units. And you basically, what you do with Dark Technomancy is you choose to overcharge any or all of the weapons. So you just overcharge the liquefiers. Obviously, you take mortal wounds on a 1 to hit, but you don't roll to hit. You're just doing your flamer roll, and then you're putting out ludicrous amounts of double damage flamers at +1 to wound.
The other thing I think that, whilst we're on faction traits, because it is relevant and something I want to talk about, is this is probably the first time I've ever seen GW get leadership debuffs right. This is the first time they actually matter.
Really?
And they mean anything. Yeah, so they're now a really big deal. So
I even have the page open.
Yeah,
for the right one.
Well, to look like the main reason is because of Incubi and because of the Homunculus and because of the Drazar. Drazar and the Incubi can make a unit fight last if they roll over leadership and 2d6, and then I can't remember the Coven. Adam, you have to fill me in.
The Dark Creed.
The Dark Creed. Yeah, they have a relic.
It's a warlord trait.
Warlord
so this is Skari. Skari talks about this all the time. He calls it the Booger Booger Homunculus because he goes boo and he scares the obsec out of you.
Yeah.
Go on.
Well, I was just going to say these abilities require you to beat leadership, and so now it actually matters that you can take faction traits that have negative leadership effects. You can take Grizzly trophies and all your vehicles to have negative leadership effects. And before there was just it was never worth the upgrade. And now it is, which is very exciting for things like Night Lords, etc.
Well, it's because you can. I think the thing that plays into that as well is like you can have phantasm grenade launchers on a lot of your troop units. So witches, the Hecatari, the sort of like sergeant in a witch unit, she can take or the Hecatrix, sorry, she can take a phantasm grenade launcher. I mean, Kabalites can do it as well, but we're working on the basis which is going to be going in close. And if you beat the leadership on a phantasm grenade launcher, so you roll to hit, then you roll the leadership. If you beat the leadership, they take D3 mortal wounds. So it's like a free smite. So again, if you're debuffing their leadership, so the Dark Creed, the one it's talking about, basically is Aura of Terror. So while a unit is within 6 inches of a unit with this obsession, subtract 1 from their leadership, and subtract 1 from combat attrition tests made for that unit. And each time a melee attack for a unit with this obsession targets a unit with a leadership characteristic that is equal to or lower than the attacking unit's leadership characteristic, add 1 to the attack's hit roll. So again, if you park a raider nearby with like Grizzly trophies, that gives you -2 to the leadership. These guys give you -1, so you're basically looking at a -3 leadership aura within like 3 inches. It's pretty crazy. And the homunculus for these guys with this warlord trait, Fear Incarnate, with this booger homunculus, as Skari calls it. It's basically at the end of your movement phase, select one enemy unit within 9 inches of the warlord and roll 3d6. If the result is greater than the enemy unit's leadership characteristic until the start of your next movement phase, the enemy unit cannot perform actions. If it's currently performing action, it immediately fails and loses the objective secured ability. Hello, 20-man blob of Necrons. Allow me to introduce you to this homunculus. Homunculus says boo. Obviously needs to roll over let's say there's no debuffs, needs to roll over a 10 on 3d6. And, you've lost your obsec and you're not doing any actions. Soz.
I will say, actually, just in terms of the new leadership rules for 9th, oh my god, if they don't go your way, that's it.
Yeah, they're good though, because they're still not as all or nothing as they used to be.
No, they're good. I really like them.
Yeah, they're not as all as nothing, all or nothing.
Yeah, it used to be the case that no one cared about leadership, but now it's an actual, almost part of the game.
It was much worse before, because before it was the case that it either never mattered, or you could just auto wipe things. Like you would just there's 30 boys, I'll kill. I don't know.
I've killed this many
20,
this time,
and then the rest are gonna run, and it's
I'm not shooting at them anymore.
Cool. You don't want that. Whereas now, having that odd little small orc boys unit survivors, as we know, is potentially devastating.
Yeah. So yeah, the leadership stuff in this book is, I think, as Ed's nailed it there. It's just very good, and the fact it actually matters and you can build to it. And I was saying this the other day, how many armies have you ever thought about where you can build specifically for leadership debuffs? Yeah. Apart from Night Lords, but it didn't work.
There's also a strat where they can after leave none alive or something, and it's and you can make the -1 attrition for the rest of the game. And it's that's, so you'll be, it's if it's Dark Creed, because Dark Creed, if you got those Grizzly trophies, you're -3 by a vehicle, -3 leadership, and then you'll be things running away on 3s. So things really can go bad if you start failing morale.
Yeah, I think the as I say, build for Dark Creed. I mean, you don't have to build how you want, but I think there's quite a funny build where you build into Dark Creed and you have all your raiders with Grizzly trophies and things like that on them, and you run them into combat and then have the homunculus nearby, and it's like leadership minus. Oh, and my raider can smack you because weirdly my transport is quite good in combat. It's
a blade artist.
Yeah, and it's a blade artist. I mean, you can give on the subject of the raider, just what we're talking about. You can give them the chain snares as well, and that adds 3 attacks to them. So you can have them hitting on strength. I mean, if you make, the other thing as well we should say is you can make the vehicles. You can assign what Cabal, Witch Cult, or whether they are Cabal, Witch Cult, or Coven, and they gain the trait, right? So I saw an interesting one, just moving off the leadership. I saw an interesting one where someone was saying because there's a witch cult that basically gives you +1 strength on the charge, you can have a raider that's +1 strength, so it ends up at strength 8, I think, overall, with +3 attacks, and it just comes in and does how many 6 attacks at strength 8, potentially -1 or 2. It's just pretty crazy for what is a glorified rhino, effectively. And they can have a thing called a shock prow as well, which gives you access to the shock prow strat, which again on the charge you can just dole out quite a lot of mortal wounds, because I'm just trying to find it now, but if I remember rightly, I think the shock prow strat basically is another one of these roll for every model in the unit, and it's not capped.
It's that, or if you use it on a vehicle, I think it's just a flat D3.
Yes, yeah. Let's just have a look. I'll just see if I can find it for a second.
Ramming speed.
Where is it? I'm just trying to find the damn thing.
Well, while
But,
you're looking for that, Adam,
Yeah.
I'll go to Ed. What would you say? I don't want to go to like a conscious, not to go to like a full kind of overview of the whole credits. But what would you say was like your pick of the stratagems?
My pick of the stratagems. Oh, that is a good question. I think you do have to give a shout out to Vect. Still, it is still really, really good. Vect has now changed. If you saw Warhammer Community, you'll be aware it's now instead of kind of denying a strat after you use a strat, it adds one to the cost of that strat thereafter. So we all know how much like some Marine players rely on Transhuman to keep their models around, and so making that 2 or 3 CP is absolutely devastating. But I think in terms of just like right now, it just has to be the eviscerating flyby, because 10 mortal wounds is just I don't think
That's
there's
horrendous.
I don't think there's a single book that we've had in 9th edition that goes anywhere near that. I don't think anything comes close. So I don't know if that was like, maybe they forgot to put the max. Because normally it's max 3, but I mean it almost seems, because like they'll do 10 because it's on with Hellions. You're doing 10 mortal wounds really quite easily.
Yeah. I mean, can you like it's because it's what, roll 1d6 for each model in the unit, added 1 to result if the model is an infantry unit. For each result of 5 plus they suffer a mortal wound. I mean, can you imagine like a big unit of boys, and you fly them over the top, and it's just like, oh, there's half your boys gone, and that was in the movement phase. That was fun.
There's also you can I can't remember what cult it is, which cult it is, but I think it's Red Grief, where they can fight and then jump back into transports. That's quite fun.
I think that is Red Grief.
Yeah, that's that one I love, because like it's just so many little mind games. You know, that's the.
It's like a hit and run almost.
Yeah, definitely.
That's quite cool.
But I would say as well, the other thing on the strats is that we've had a bit of day one DLC with the Drakari Codex. So the Warzone Charadon, the Book of Rust came out, and the Cult of Strife get additional rules in there, which is Lelith Hesprax's witch
And
cult.
they're really good.
And they're they're nuts. I mean, some of the strats in there, I don't have the book like with me at this moment, but some of the rules in there are just nuts, and that's what gave rise to I think Ed made a reference to it, a very subtle reference to it earlier, but there's like definitely one thing in this book, which is, or in these books I should say, which is like a succubus build, which everyone has been talking about, and is just fundamentally broken and will almost certainly be FAQ'd. I assume it will, because it's just nuts. To give you a quick overview of what that is, it's basically when you give a succubus this weapon called Razor Flails. So the rule with the Razor Flails is basically every time you make an attack, make another one. So and then there's is it a Warlord? Yeah, so you think about it like doubling your attacks. So let's say you have 5 attacks and you attack with Razor Flails, you make 10 attacks, right? So that in and of itself is not particularly unreasonable. However, when you pair that with a trait, is it a trait called? It's a Warlord trait, Competitive Edge, which is a Cult of Strife Warlord trait, which basically says for every attack you make that doesn't reach the damage allocation stage of the fight phase, you make another attack. Right?
So yeah.
So let's say I
clarify is like everything I think but feel no pains. Basically.
Yes. Yeah. So let's say you come in with, and this is not the number of attacks, but I'm just going to do round numbers off the top of my head. Let's say you come in with like 10 attacks and 5 get through and 5 fail. Well, then you make another 5 attacks, but because you're making 5 attacks and you have the Razor Flails, you're actually making 10 attacks. So you make another 10 attacks, right? So do you see how it like it goes on in theory in like an infinite loop? Although I think Ed, you and I were discussing this, and they said it's like capped out at like 42, right? It was like the max that people think you can get to.
Oh, is that all?
It caps. It caps at
Jesus.
Yeah, it caps at 42, but that's with the first 14 failing. So really, you can only make 28. But then, so this is the thing, okay? This is the thing about this trait, and I think Adam is right in that it is probably a bit much. I will say this is certainly not a rules as written, rules and attention issue, because like there's no other way to read this, because it's literally it's like it's written perfectly to use this way, because it says each time you fail the attack, you make 1 more attack, and then Razor Flail says each time you make an attack, you make 2 attacks. There is really no other way to read that. But I will say, so for this to get full effectiveness, what this means is that you'll make 10 attacks, make 14 attacks, all of them fail, and then you make 28 attacks and all of them succeed. So
Yeah.
that's a bit more reasonable. So you're going to get, I don't know exactly how that maths out against like average characters. Either way, it is a metric ton of attacks that can be D3. Three damage, 2 damage easy. You can be ignoring invuns. No, sorry, actually, that's specific for a cult, I think. But you can get 3 damage pretty easily. There's a lot of stuff. Yeah.
I mean, we should also forget again if we're talking about like really good. Sorry, I've moved this on to almost like really good units as well, which I think was a question earlier about like what you need to watch out for as well. That obviously the succubus is just really good, and one of the builds you'll probably see with that is what we call the triptych witch succubus. The triptych whip succubus. Basically there's a combination you can do, and I won't flick through the book to get to it, and I'll probably get a bit of this wrong, but basically she has a whip that is 3 damage, and you can I think it's a trait that basically says that then any hit rolls of 6 to hit, you do an equivalent amount of mortal wounds to the damage of the weapon you're using. So basically, I come into, again, Succubus have 7 attacks, which is where we were getting the 1428 number on the previous one. I run into your Custodes, Alex, with my Succubus hitting on a 2+. Any 6s she rolls to hit, that's 3 mortal wounds a time.
Yeah.
What?
I think the thing
Oh,
as well we haven't mentioned
God.
is she's 60 points.
Yes, so cheap.
So
cheap.
60
Fuck
points.
you guys.
Is insane.
What is
like
this?
That's. I mean, I appreciate it's like a warlord trait and a relic. I appreciate that, but 60 because like this is the thing. Your bare bones succubus is compared to I think any other character you can find for 60 points.
Oh, she's nuts.
So far and away ahead because she gets combat drugs for free. So. It's great. Like Cult of Strife, she's getting an extra attack. Like just to clarify, Cult of Strife
God.
relics are like I think one is like reroll wounds in combat.
Yeah, there is. Yeah,
Did you just get that? Like, okay, the reroll wounds is something that's very rare because of how powerful it is. Cult of Strife are properly powerful.
And to go to that army build point, like Cult of Strife are so good that one of the things I've seen people talking about, right? So two things that are really good, right? Cult of Strife and Drazar, which I'll move on to in a minute, right? But one of the problems with like the real space raid is obviously all your HQ detachments get used up because you have an Archon, Succubus, and a Homunculus, right? And the Cult of Strife rules say that you have to have a Cult of Strife detachment, and obviously a real space raid is not a Cult of Strife detachment. It is a real space raid, even though you can have Cult of Strife witches and succubi in there. So one of the things I've seen people doing, and this is how good the bloody rules are for this thing, is to get both the Cult of Strife additional rules and to get Drazar in there because he's an HQ choice, is to have an additional patrol on top, pay the 2 CP for it, and then stick Drazar in as the HQ because he's not unaligned, but he's basically like a blade for hire, and then declare it as a Cult of Strife detachment. So then you get the full rule set, plus you get this absolute monster character of Drazar, who does crazy nonsense in and of himself as well. I mean, he's a little bit more expensive, but like, it's probably worth it, to be honest. He's just mad.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think he is basically an auto take if it wasn't for the case that he's quite hard to fit into a lot of or at least a lot of list people are planning right now. But if it was easier to put him in, I think you'd probably see him all the time. Especially given how good Incubi are. There's nothing wrong with there is nothing Incubi because, and this is the thing about survivability and this is what I really want with GSC. So having a glass cannon army is fine if you have ways to survive, and being able to always fight before your opponent, or reasonably reliably fight before your opponent, as Incubi can do, making things fight last, is a good way to do that. So it's quite cool.
Yeah. I mean, to go through Drazar just quickly in the Incubi, so he's obviously he's got a 2-up weapon skill, 2-up ballistic skill, not that matters, he hasn't got any guns. He's got a 2-up save, 4-up invuln save. He obviously gets Blade Artist, he obviously gets power from Pain, which means he can advance and charge from turn 2. And again, in a Cabal of the Black Heart in a Cabal of the Black Heart patrol, he'd have to be, and he wouldn't be able to be in a real space raid. He can advance and charge from turn 1 because they treat the power from Pain table as being 1 higher for both Cabal units and for Blades for
Does he
Hire,
get
which
that,
Drazar is. Yeah, because he's Blades for Hire, so he would get it in that setup. It's quite a niche setup, but he would get it. And he has, I say, weapon skill 2. He's got the Demiclave, the Executioner's Demiclaves. He basically has 2 profiles, one of which is Strength 6, AP -3, flat 3 damage. The other one is Strength +1, so Strength 5, AP -3, 2 damage, and he makes 2 additional attacks with that. So he's making 7 attacks with that one, 5 on the first one. He can be selected to fight 1 additional time in each fight phase. so you can just fight twice for free. And he subtracts -1 to damage when people attack him. Because he's got the ancient, he's kind of a Death Guard unit. He's got the Ancient Warrior keyword, and he has the Tormentors rule, which the Incubi have, which I'll go through now. Which is start of the fight phase, select one enemy unit within engagement range, roll 2d6. If the result is greater than their leadership, then they fight last. And he's also got the Master of Blades aura, which means Incubi units within 6 inches add 1 to the wound roll. So he's pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm
And
just
that
rushing
plus
to
one-
check my Blade Guard's leadership right now.
Yeah, he's pretty damn good. My little goat boy.
Yeah, I'm not a massive fan of the goat thing myself. I think I would convert that, but yeah, no qualms with it if you want to run it.
I quite like the idea of a bunch of angry goats with big swords.
yeah, no, for sure.
And yeah, the Incubi, have similarly good rules. So they have that Tormentors rule as well. So even without Drazar, they're still doing that. They can do on a modified wound roll of a 6. They add 1 to damage of their attacks. And bear in mind they've got the Clave, most of them, which is again puts them at strength 5, AP -3, 2 damage. And the Clave X, who's the sergeant, basically he can have demi-claves for free. I don't know why you wouldn't take them, and that again gives him this like single blade or dual blade, an extra attack thing, a lot like Drazar has. So they just end up being really, really, really good. And again, they've got blade artists for extra AP on the 6s, and they've got power from pain, so they're getting that invuln, and they're getting the advance and charge.
They sound brutal.
Yeah, they're pretty good. Is the summary there?
Well, I don't know if you mentioned, but okay, so one pick this time, not 5 strats. When I said one, Ed's the most eager person. What is the relic of, the one that stands out to you, your relic of choice? Do they have relics? I presume they do.
Yeah, Ed, do you want to go first?
I didn't have one ready to go. So
Keeping you on your toes, mate.
I think I quite like. The thing is, a lot of them are be more killy. So like you have the whip, you have the gym blade. They're much more killy. But in terms of things that are interesting, okay, this one's fun. I like the Helm of Spite. So the reason the Helm of Spite is fun is because not only do you get to deny the witch, but if you deny the witch with that, then the the psycho who tried to cast that psychic power suffers perils of the warp, which is quite cool.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That is very
Spite is appropriate, right? Yeah. I mean,
fuck
I
you.
would say I'm going to say the Gym Blade solely because I like it. It's very Dark Eldar what it does. So as Ed says, it absolutely makes you more killy, and in that sense, it can be quite dull. However, the Gym Blade obviously allows you to make more attacks. So 2 additional attacks. It's flat 3 damage. But at the end of the fight phase, you roll d6 if the bearer made any attacks with the weapon, and on a 1, the bearer suffers a mortal wound. Which is very Drakari, right? It's like this super powerful weapon. It does loads of damage, but if like you roll a 1, I take a mortal wound, and that's me suffering because I'm using this horrific demon weapon thing.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Cool.
Ah,
For sure.
that
So yeah,
codex
Drakari are
sounds
really good,
like
guys.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot to get my
Yeah, I
head
think-
around.
I think it's just a really great indicator of what's to come. Like we all know how bad
Yeah.
Drakari were. They've clearly really looked at them. I'm so interested to see what this does to the meta, because I'm not smart enough to math hammer it out in my head how that will go up against a typical Death Guard or Dark Angels or Necrons list. So I'm so interested to see what comes of it. There's definitely going to be probably a slightly slow pickup because it's not the most common army, and then it'll probably go too far one way to start with because it's like a lot of new stuff. Whenever there's a new book, it takes people by surprise. About in a month's time, it'll be interesting to see what's going on.
Yeah, it'd be cool.
Yeah.
I guess, and Admech's the next one, right? That's the next.
Yes.
new
Yeah,
codex?
Yeah.
which has unfortunately
So-
been delayed, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm just excited for all of this. I'm just super excited for everything that's coming.
So I
Tell
think
me about
that's genuinely really makes me happy, right? That it's Admech. The reason for that is because I honestly think the reason is because they have the faction specific, but they have an idea of how they want the army to play. They want the faction specific abilities to want to be. They clearly know what they want these new Sulphur Hounds and Riders to do, and the planes and stuff. So the reason Admech are first, and then I'm assuming we're going to have Sisters and then Orcs, is because they know how they want these armies to play, and so they're taking their time with the things that are delayed. So I think, like the reason Tau, stop people like how to not have Tau when Tau is so bad, I think it's because they're thinking about Tau. And that's what you'd want, right? You'd rather them take an extra 6 months and then make an excellent book than kind of rush it out and then we get kind of like a rehash of Space Marine doctrines or whatever it's going to be. And also, we haven't spoken about this, but there has been a rumor engine with a Gene Stealer cult in it. Let's go! So.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, in my head, I'm thinking this is going to come out just before we start going to tournaments. I'm hoping, I'm really hoping, and then I'll hit the scene.
Yeah. we've got
Ed becomes the top Gene Stealer cult player in the world.
Yeah, man. Awesome.
Well, that's what you got to do. You got to get into these armies now because you can't just for example, like I said with Jukari, it's very if you're someone that's playing tournaments right now, it's quite hard to just get 2,000 points of Jukari ready and done. Compared to like say Custodes or Tau, which are generally quite quick armies to collect. So yeah, someone
for you,
yeah. But yes,
exciting future, and we got Primaris Orcs as well. So
yeah,
I can't wait for this. This is so interesting. They
Beast
clearly
Snagger boys.
It's clearly a bit of a new direction. I guess we should talk about this because it's like it's not it's not that it's. And because obviously snake bites are kind of feral orcs already, but I thought they were going to lean more and more into Ghazghkull in this edition, and it doesn't look like they are. They're going this unless this is like a new thing that Ghazghkull is going to recruit all these feral orcs or whatever it's going to be. So I'm so interested to see lore wise what the thought process is here with all these new models.
Far as I'm concerned, if he gets the crumping done, I'm interested. All right. Sorry, there we go. That was the orc.
Yeah.
that was literally what Noel Fielding from the Mighty Boosh.
Yeah. Do I look like I'm a reasonable man or a peppermint nightmare?
Oh dear.
Awesome. Should unless anyone's got anything else they want to cover, should we look at wrapping up?
Yeah, man.
No.
Yeah, I'm good with that. I need to eat. I am starving.
We don't want to keep Alex
Well,
away from his
discussion
meal.
of,
So no, thank you everybody.
Food's an important part of my life.
I'm going to try that again. Thank you everyone for listening. We have been the Conclave 40k podcast. Please make sure to check us out on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube,
OnlyFans.
Me and Ed are putting up our first video in a couple of weeks. It's going to be a cheeky Gene Stealer and Ashton Militarum number. And this has gone really off track again. But no, thank you for listening. And any suggestions or topics, please give us a shout. Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Love you, bye.